All right, I'd like to call to order the Whatcom County Council meeting for August 8th, 2018. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Paul Sadoo.
Here.
Todd Donovan.
Here.
Tyler Bird. Here. Barry Buchanan.
Here.
Red Brown.
Here.
Barbara Brenner.
Here.
Tim Ballou.
Would you all rise and join me in the flag salute? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry?
No, I said August 8th. For clarity, it says August 8th, 2018. Just a couple of announcements. Please turn off your cell phones, and if you will be handing out paperwork to council members, please give one copy to the clerk for our office files. Thank you. First up is a public hearing announcement for we're doing a public hearing, and audience members who've signed up in the back of the room prior to the beginning of our meeting will be called first and are asked to form a line behind the signs at either side of the chambers. If you're unable to sign up before the meeting, you'll be given an opportunity to address the council once we've gotten through all the folks listed on the hearing sheets. Each speaker should state his or her name for the record and will be given 3 minutes to address the council. Council staff will keep track of time limits and will let you know when you have 30 seconds left to wrap up your comments. When a large group of individuals supports the same proposition on an issue, we encourage the selection of 1 or 2 representatives to speak on behalf of the entire group. The first up is an ordinance imposing an interim moratorium on the acceptance and processing of applications and permits for new or expanded facilities in the Cherry Point urban growth area, the primary purpose of which will be the shipment of unrefined fossil fuels not to be processed at Cherry Point. Any staff report? No. And then with that, we'll open the public hearing, and the first people up are Holly Johnson, Lane McAvoy, and Ken Phipps. I would encourage people to line up. I'll call 3 other names, and I'd encourage you to line up. And then it is Dena Jensen, Sandi, Robson, and Paula Rotundi.
Good evening. My name is Holly Johnson. I'm with Western States Petroleum Association. I'm here to speak on behalf of the association. I'll keep this brief because it is hot in here, and I know there's a lot of people here that want to speak on this issue. First, I want to say that we do have serious concerns with the County Council's use of the interim moratorium. We believe that this continued use is an inappropriate way for the county to regulate existing businesses on what is quickly becoming a permanent basis. Western States Petroleum Association also has serious concerns with some of the proposed changes on the Whatcom County Comprehensive Plan. These current proposals make dramatic, unworkable changes to the comprehensive plan, creates grave concerns regarding the ongoing economic viability of not only the 2 refineries, but other businesses located in the heavy industrial area of Whatcom County. Western States Petroleum Association believes the temporary moratorium exceeds the county's powers under state law, and more significantly, continues the ongoing burdens on interstate and foreign commerce in Whatcom County, and they have no power to regulate under the federal constitution. I would like to also comment quickly on the proposed comprehensive plan amendments. The county council's proposed changes, the Whatcom County Code and comprehensive plan, we believe is an attack on the economic development and job creation in the county. In many cases, the county council's proposed comprehensive plan amendments are a contradiction of what the county council's stated support of Cherry Point refineries have been. To sum up, we urge the council to review our formal comments that we emailed to you earlier today, and I've handed to staff hard copies, and allow the current moratorium to expire without further renewal. We also urge the council to not move forward with the proposed changes to the Whatcom County Comp Plan and County Code changes related to Cherry Point. We hope you will continue to work with our industries in the Cherry Point area. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lane McAvoy. I have a wife and 2 kids, and we live in Linden, Washington. I work for J.H. Kelly. We're a contractor at Phillips 66, where I'm responsible for approximately 80 craftspeople making a living wage safely every day. This is my 23rd year professionally in the construction business, mostly in refining, but in several other businesses as well. I've always felt the safest when I work in the refining business. Plan their work, they engineer their work better than anybody else out there. Because I work in construction, I've had to spend years on the road in not so nice hotels. I've hugged my tearful kids and my wife goodbye countless Sundays throughout my life. Thankfully, I've been able to spend recent years at the area refineries, but life before that was pretty hard. Please don't force the hardworking men and women that I care about in this business into the same lifestyle. Please stop the increased regulation of the generous businesses at Cherry Point. Please rescind Resolution 2018-015 and do not extend the fossil fuel moratorium. Don't put my friends, family, and coworkers that I care so much about in the same style of life I had to live. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask, as one person comes down to speak, if the next person could already come to the podium, and that will alternate between it, and this will make this go faster for everybody. So, Dena, if you'd like to come down, and if you'd like to come down as well. Either one is fine. And then after that, I would like Mike Cully, Sandi, Robson, and Robert McLeod. Paula Rotundi.
I feel like I already made a mistake. Sorry about that.
Right.
So I'm Ken Phipps with Safeway Services. I've been working in the refineries for 20 years now, and our company employs around 400 folks locally. And as Lane touched on, these refineries really work hard to keep my friends and my family safe. And I have three kids and a wife that really rely on me to make a living wage, and it's important to my family and my colleagues that we support the businesses in Whatcom County. It seems like a lot of folks down on their luck around here, and I think if we can come together with these businesses and allow these folks to have a good paying job, it might help them out also. So, yeah, I'm not for extending the moratorium. Thank you.
Dena Jensen, Burch Bay. Good evening, council members. I want to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on land that is the traditional territory of the Lummi and Nooksack peoples. May we nurture our relationship with our Coast Salish neighbors and the shared responsibilities to their homelands where we all reside today. I had sent you an email in support of the interim moratorium on the approval of permits for new or expanded unrefined fossil fuel export projects out of Cherry Point. Tonight, I also want to support revising the language in the moratorium to provide additional protections for Cherry Point until you have made and approved amendments to the comprehensive plan that will provide adequate protections to our community, Lummi Nation's sacred lands at Quechiacan, the Cherry Point Aquatic Reserve, and the life forms in the Salish Sea near Cherry Point. There are species such as our painfully struggling orca population and the species that feed them who are experiencing extreme stress and are threatened with extinction due to climate change and man-made activities such as vessel traffic, especially increased vessel traffic in the area. Meanwhile, the increased transporting of fuels such as propane by rail boosts the threat to the communities they pass through. Please place this hopefully final moratorium not just on new or expanded unrefined fossil fuel project permits, export project permits, but on all new or expanded fossil fuel project permits. I also remind you again to be making choices in your other council actions that will encourage the prompt transition away from fossil fuels while still promoting needed jobs in our region. Using and assembling your advisory committees thoughtfully and strategically, and encouraging community members to present our county with opportunities that allow renewable energy projects to be supported and promoted in appropriately placed areas in our county will help hasten the prompt transition we must have away from the damaging extraction, transport, processing, and consumption of fossil fuels. For example, if we are falling back on convenience and are actually allowing an unbalanced amount of direction from fossil fuel-based industry experts regarding business in Whatcom County, we risk further indenturing ourselves to this type of enterprise that poses severe threats not only to workers and our community, but to those that
30
are
seconds, please.
but to those that are negatively impacted by the extraction and transport of these hazardous substances in and through their communities. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Robert McLeod. I am one of your constituents. I rise to ask that you rescind this moratorium on Cherry Point facilities. For the past extended period of time, I've been forced to work outside of Whatcom County because there is not enough family wage jobs here in Whatcom County. The bulk of our family wage jobs are in the facilities out there at Cherry Point. Now, in 12 years in construction, I've had the opportunity to work out there for a number of years, and it seems though as within the last couple of years, things have severely slowed down inside those facilities. And I do not know it for a fact, but I feel that it is potentially a result of this moratorium and the fact that the companies are no longer competitive and no longer able to fund projects out in those facilities. So again, I ask you to rescind this moratorium. Thank you.
Mr.
Hi,
Robson.
Sandi Robson, Burch Bay. I strongly support Ordinance AB 2018-077B imposing an interim moratorium. Our county is under attack from fossil fuel interests, which have set their sights on Cherry Point. We will have to endure a never-ending siege on Cherry Point unless we can get stricter and permanent protections in place. The advocates who want to see more unrefined fossil fuel development at Cherry Point have framed things as, quote, jobs versus environment, quote. This isn't about jobs, and it's never been. That's just messaging created by public relations experts. Those current industry jobs are not going away. This is about our future survival, and I believe everyone here knows that deep down. But somehow, companies like BP, Phillips 66, Petrogas, SSA Marine, and their advocates have convinced some workers and others that those current Cherry Point jobs are in jeopardy. Again, that's messaging created by public relations experts. Our county, via your direction, needs to take further actions necessary to protect public health and safety, as well as protect the future health of our environment. There continue to be emerging court decisions that can offer a pathway toward creating and enacting even stronger protections and a more permanent ban against fossil fuel-based projects here in Whatcom County, which put our community's safety, health, and environment at an unacceptable level of risk. One of those court decisions is the recent ruling by the Oregon Supreme Court, where they refused to hear a challenge to the city's ordinance to ban new fossil fuel infrastructure. So far, the Oregon Court of Appeals decision to overturn the ruling of the Land Use Board of the Appeals against the City of Portland zoning ordinance has been upheld. You council members can take action to reduce the risks to our community's safety, health, and environment, but you need time to put those plans into action, such as code changes, permitting regulations, and changes to our county's comprehensive plan and shoreline management plan. And you need courage, because there are big, wealthy corporations which are applying great pressure to you as they are driven by profit. I and many others have confidence that you have enough courage to continue to keep the moratorium in place until you can get all of those needed protections in place. We are depending on you, council members, as our last line of defense. I also ask, as you move forward, that you be less reluctant to use funds already allocated to obtain additional outside legal consultation, because I do not think our county's legal counsel is well enough
30
versed
seconds, please.
is well enough versed in land use law. Thank you very much.
Hey, my name is Mike Coley. I belong to Local 70, the Carpenters Local Union. I've been in this, lived in this county approximately 25 years. I've spent the better part of 20 years working out in the area, refinery especially. I speak on behalf of the Carpenters Union, and others in the field. For one thing, I would choose that you rescind this moratorium. We take it as a personal hit on our livelihood. To say that you are not affecting the jobs of the folks out there would be completely erroneous. The fellow before me that spoke, that's having a harder time finding a job out here in this area, is perfectly true. The refineries themselves are up against the wall trying to make this profit. Everybody's driven by supply and demand. And the demand occurs every day. If you see the highways, you see the airports, you know how many planes fly out of SeaTac every day, never mind the other airports in the area. Each one of these refineries represent about 25% of that fuel needed for those planes. You're not flying those planes on solar, okay? I do a lot of things in this area. I have a whole solar setup at home. My only boat is a kayak. I bicycle. What I wanted to bring up is the fact that this area, as pristine as it is gorgeous. If the local government would get behind the tremendous job that the refineries do about keeping a safe work environment, if there was some sort of point system for how well they do their job, it might blow you away. Because we are set to the nth standard out at the refinery to be as safe as we possibly can. And for I've worked in many places in this country, and this area sets the standard in the field. People come to this area and remark countlessly about the environment that we bring here. No other places take housekeeping and safety to the extent that we do. I ask that this local government get behind the refineries, because they are the one that's bringing this tax base, bringing the generations of workers to this field. And these, by generations, I mean generations.
30 seconds, please.
From 1971 on, in the 50s, if you go back to P66 when it was built, that's something to be proud of. We're trying to keep our children, grandchildren in the area working, and I really think you should be giving credit to this industry. Thank you very much.
Paula Rotundi, Hamilton Dutcher, Joe Wilson, David Kirchner, Alex McLean.
Paula Rotundi, Whatcom County. I speak in support of extending the moratorium. Because today's Cherry Point industries provide hundreds of high-paying jobs refining fossil fuels essential to our county, state, and region, we must continue to support these industries' existing operations and encourage them to continually improve upon safety. But Whatcom County should not gamble further with our health and our lives by placing additional bets on new or expanded fossil fuel projects at Cherry Point. Already, our county, state, and region are too familiar with the intrinsic dangers of the fossil fuel industry. Already, we have had refinery fires and explosions that have injured and have killed refinery workers. Already, we have trains that spill coal and oil, threatening our communities and polluting our lands and our waterways. Already, we've had ships spill hundreds of thousands of gallons of oil, polluting, harming, and driving sea life toward extinction. Already, we've had pipelines leak, spill, explode, pollute, and worst of all, kill 3 of our children. We do not need new or expanded fossil fuel projects at Cherry Point. We have enough already. Already around the world, in the USA, and before our very eyes here in Whatcom County, we witness environmental degradation and climate change destroy the natural resources upon which our lives depend. Our fisheries are collapsing. Our freshwater sources are becoming insufficient to meet demand. Water quality is degrading. Wildfires are burning our forests and polluting our air. Agricultural cycles are shifting.
30 seconds, please.
Extreme weather, including high temperatures, storms, flooding, droughts, are being recorded. There is no amount of love or money that can give a child today any chance of living on a healthy earth just 80 years from now, unless we halt environmental degradation and slow climate change. So I thank you for the votes you already cast for this moratorium. I ask you to vote to extend it again. It's time to focus on attracting renewable energy. Thank you.
Again, if people could come up to the podium in anticipation for the next person's finishing.
I'm Joe Wilson. I'm Vice President of Peterson Brothers. I've been up here before, so you probably remember. We're a heavy industrial steel fabricator. We work in industries like the petrochemical industry. We are located here in Bellingham. I live in Bellingham. We have 50 employees and here in town, but we probably have a couple hundred employees of subcontractors also working for us. I would like to rescind Resolution 2018-015, and we are want to end this moratorium. When I first came in here tonight, we were talking about being hot, that the air conditioning wasn't going. Well, what happens if we get rid of fossil fuels and that air conditioning? Because we won't have any. The fact is, I'm also a consultant for Tesla. I know something about solar power. And I also have been involved in building windmills, and they cannot carry the load. We do need fossil fuels, and believe it or not, fossil fuels saves lives. You can take a graph of the 1920s to today and look at the use of fossil fuels as it goes up, and you'll also see the life expectancy of man increase too. You cannot cut off fossil fuels and not do a detriment to our civilization. There is not anyone in here today that does not support clean air, clean water, and a clean environment. There may be some in here that don't support good paying jobs in the county, but as your representatives, and you represent us all, you should support that, and you should end this moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Hamilton Dutcher here. I live in Bellingham, Washington, and I think it's the best place in the world here. And I like it. Continue the moratorium. You're doing good. Now, I would like that when you say we're going to limit the number of train cars to 100, that you make sure that the train car stays that same size. But what I'm looking at right now is accidents. When you and I are out on the road, we must have accident insurance. I want to make sure that corporations have accident insurance also. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we had David Kirchner, Alex McLean, Dirk Fraser, Ronald Coulson, Tony Zempel, and Josh Summers.
Thank you. My name is David Kirchner. I live on Lummi Island. I used to work in the commercial fishing industry when I was young. We've seen the declines in herring runs at Cherry Point and the impact on our salmon fisheries. Extending this moratorium is really about protecting the health, safety, and environment of our community. The moratorium needs to be extended given the catastrophic risks of oil train derailments, of other forms of transport of crude oil through our community and the Salish Sea. It only makes sense to extend the moratorium to allow the Planning Commission to review the draft ordinance, and I encourage you to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex McLean, Lubin, Bellingham. Apologies in advance, I didn't have anything eloquent or profound prepared, but I found out about this last night, and I wanted to invite the council to think of the idea that this moratorium is actually a really responsible thing for you to do. Instead of foreclosing on the future of your heavy industrial area, you're actually allowing some room for some other industry to be used up there. And I fully appreciate and hear the people who are talking about jobs in the future. We need good paying jobs in Bellingham and Whatcom County for that matter. As a construction goon myself, I wouldn't hesitate to get one of those good paying jobs, but on the flip side, I'm a wild-eyed environmentalist, so it wouldn't work out for me philosophically. The thing is, we have a set amount of energy that our society needs. We're going to get that energy. A few people have mentioned the air conditioning, how hot it is in here. It's hotter in California. California's on fire. The planet is hotter. Everywhere on this earth right now is screaming about the environmental impacts of our addiction to fossil fuels. Most anybody can look around. You don't have to be a science major to figure this out. The reckoning is here, and it's time for us to start thinking proactively and pressuring to look at alternatives. Because if we keep doubling down on fossil fuels, we can see the results. We know where that trajectory is going. I think that's all I've got. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ronald Coulson. I live in the Geneva neighborhood. I strongly favor making all additional oil and gas projects at Cherry Point conditional uses instead of permitted uses. The temporary moratorium should be made permanent. I know that there are some who believe that Cherry Point should become a fossil fuel port like so many on the south coast of Texas. Let me try to convince you that there are much better options. I could try to appeal to everyone's basic fears by explaining the very real possibility that if we keep burning fossil fuels, we could create a planet-killing hothouse. I could waste time describing the virtually universal agreement by the global scientific community that our overheating planet is the direct result of humankind's burning of fossil fuels. I could try to appeal to everyone's better angels to save this unique and rare planet for the benefit of our great-grandchildren and all who follow. But all of those points have already been made many times before by smarter people than me. Therefore, I will attempt to appeal to your greed. Cherry Point is a unique heavy industrial site on one of the last deep water ports on the West Coast, located between Vancouver, British Columbia and Seattle, Washington, with a combined population of 7 million people. Any manufacturer would seriously consider building a new factory at Cherry Point, but not if we foul it up by expanding the production of dirty fossil fuels. Here's just one example of an employer that would be far better alternative to expanding the production of fossil fuels. In 2015, Elon Musk announced that they were building the Gigafactory and that it would be known as Gigafactory 1, as they planned on making more factories. And within a week of unveiling it, he estimated that Gigafactory 1 would not be enough to supply demand. They make lithium-ion batteries for the electric car industry and for storage of solar power. They located the Gigafactory in Story County, Nevada, population 4,010 people in the whole county. Nevada Republican Governor Brian Sandoval estimated that Nevada would enjoy $100 billion, that's billion with a B, in economic benefit over 2 decades from the construction and operation of this factory. Early estimates are that this single gigafactory will ultimately train and employ 6,500 full-time workers by year 2022. Starting pay is currently $25 an hour with a full benefit package. August 1, 2018, Tesla announced that it's already raising $2 billion from the Asian debt markets to build a gigafactory, number 3, in Shanghai, China. The potential for family wage jobs from heavy manufacturing located at Cherry Point is tremendous if we attract 21st century employers.
Time.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Council. My name is Josh Summers. I work at the Phillips 66 Ferndale Refinery. I'm speaking to you tonight in opposition to the moratorium as I have in the past. Previously, myself or representatives from the Phillips 66 Refinery have enumerated the reasons why we staunchly oppose the moratorium. We've explained how it oversteps the current permitting process, which already allows for the public to weigh in on major projects. We've expressed our concern on how the moratorium is seemingly at odds with the Commerce Clause, and it puts a chilling effect on businesses in Cherry Point. But tonight, I really want to just talk about jobs. It was brought up earlier, and we stated previously that it puts our jobs at risk, but I'm not sure that anybody's actually gone through and kind of explained what that looks like, so that's what I'm going to do. The Ferndale Refinery is one of 13 refineries that Phillips 66 operates around the globe. Each of these refineries compete for investment dollars from our corporation. Our refinery manager travels to Houston to talk about investment opportunities at the Ferndale Refinery, along with 12 of her peers who also travel to Houston and talk about investment opportunities at their facilities. You see, it's just one pot of investment dollars that the entire network of facilities competes with. So there are many factors that go into consideration when our company determines what projects they're going to invest in. But nothing erodes confidence in investment decisions quite like regulatory uncertainty. Will the project actually happen? Will they get the permit for this? How long will it take? By signaling to our corporation that these are the items that are genuinely that they should be concerned over, opportunities become doubts, and doubts become investment dollars going to locations where they have more confidence in the ROI that they can achieve. That's money that could have been supporting people like construction folks and other people that are in this room tonight. Ms. Brenner pointed out at one of the last hearings that a business that isn't growing is dying, and really this moratorium is just a stopgap for permanent changes to the comprehensive plan, which would undoubtedly prevent growth. Without critical investment dollars, our business and our jobs are at risk. And in an area where affordable housing, living wage jobs are real issues that are felt by many in this room, I ask that you consider changing the lens in which you view the effects of the moratorium so that you can see it for what it is, damaging to the business and vital jobs in the community. So we please ask that you reject the moratorium and find ways to keep Whatcom County competitive. Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, Alex McLean, Dirk Vermeeren, Tony Zempel, Robert Earl, Mike Sinnott.
My name is Dirk Vermeeren. As residents of Whatcom County, once again we stand before you, urging you to extend the current moratorium on permits for unrefined fossil fuel exports, projects, and expansions. As you're aware, events since the spring of this year are all signs warning us of changing environment. High temperature impact on our forests and rivers, while reduced salmon runs endanger our few remaining orcas. Federal government regulating agencies shirking their responsibilities increasingly demand that we on a local level must be prepared to take a proactive role in preserving our precious lifestyle. Unmonitored industrial growth will have long-term negative impacts on the residents of Whatcom County, and projected increased shipments of coal and oil from the Saley Seas terminals will further deteriorate the waters that are home to a number of endangered species our state economies rely on and for generating income. You as our representatives are empowered to take the lead and implement a long-term vision with policies that benefit all constituents. We support your actions to preserve and improve our current environment. We ask that you draft and implement policies that protect our natural resources from industry expansions where short-term financial gains for a select group of non-local shareholders are preferred over the long-term risks to our constituents. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tony Zempel. I'm with the Operating Engineers Local 302 out of Bothell, Washington. I work up here in Whatcom County, but our headquarters is in Bothell. I just wanted to take a quick poll tonight. Who is all in favor of extending the moratorium? And who is opposed?
Sorry. You can't do that. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He already did it.
Sorry about that. I was just curious. There's a lot of people in the room here tonight. I'm here this evening because I'm very concerned about your vote to extend the Cherry Point fossil fuel moratorium for an astonishing 5th time. I'm very concerned about Resolution 2018-015 and the resulting changes to the Whatcom County Comprehensive Land Use Plan and Whatcom County Code. These actions will do harm to my members, their families, and the entire community. I urge you not to extend the Cherry Point moratorium and rescind the Resolution 2018-015. I've been coming to these meetings for the last several years now, and in that time, I'm reminded what my grandfather used to tell me. He would say, "Don't come to me with a problem unless you have a solution." That is how grown-ups deal with life. Deal with a problem or provide a solution. You can't yank the carpet out from underneath fossil fuels unless you have a viable solution to replace these jobs. $17 an hour jobs at the solar company at the harbor mean both parents need to work for a family wage, and I hope that is not your solution. Many people think that there is an environmental problem, but taking away your tax revenue is not the solution. I don't think the solution has been invented yet, but why not put our energy into other avenues that would enhance our future instead of cripple it? Your moratorium and resolution will have greater negative impact than just affecting the fossil fuel companies at Cherry Point. The County Council's proposed changes to Whatcom County Code and the comprehensive plan is an attack on economic development and job creation in our county. It will create a chilling effect on future economic investment, economic growth, and jobs. If Cherry Point companies are not allowed to grow and make business decisions based on changing market conditions, they will cease to be competitive, and the county will suffer severe setbacks in its job growth and tax revenues. Cherry Point industries are critical to the economic health of Whatcom County. As you've been reminded many times, Cherry Point companies provide over 2,100 jobs, family wage jobs, $200 million per year in tax revenue, and over $1 million with very important charities to our community. I urge you to support the Whatcom County industries and focus on policies that balance economic opportunity and prosperity with environmental stewardship, safety, and improvements at Cherry Point. Thank you.
Sorry, just before you leave. Sir? Sorry, just before you leave. I owe you an apology. I just checked the rules. There is nothing to prevent you asking for a show of hands. Our rules discourage people or require that there is no applause or criticism of speakers.
I was just curious who was who today. I'm sorry.
No, I'm apologizing to you. You are not out of line.
Okay.
Thank you. Next, where are we on the list? So we had Alex McLean, Robert Earl, Mike Sennett, Jean Carmen, Hilary Cole.
Good evening, Council. My name's Robert Earl, and I live on the Lummi Nation. I've been a commercial fisherman my entire life, and I was involved in 1989 in the Exxon Valdez oil spill. It completely turned our lives upside down. As far as shipping unrefined fossil fuels out of Cherry Point, there's not enough safeguards. As we increase more and more ships, and the chances of having a major oil spill in Puget Sound is going up exponentially. And I also have a son that works at BP, and I'm really concerned about his job, because if we start sending unrefined fossil fuels out of this country overseas, it'll be kind of like the other industries that have shipped away jobs. And BP was designed on refining fuels. Now they want to send out unrefined fuels. That's not what the refinery was designed at. So I'm very concerned about the future of the shipping industry, of sending fossil fuels, the safety. And right now, we have some of the most beautiful sockeye going through Puget Sound, heading for the Fraser River. If we were to have a spill right now, it would be devastating. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Erin Strang, and I'm an environmental specialist at the Phipps 66 Ferndale Refinery. I've spoken with you before, and I care deeply about environmental stewardship. It's what I devoted my education to, and it's what I've devoted my career to. Like you, my family and I live, work, play, and recreate in Whatcom County. We love it here. What I will say is that you have had ample opportunity to correct the definition of unrefined fossil fuels and remove butane and propane, which are, in fact, products of refining. Please do that. I've also seen firsthand how regulatory uncertainty introduced by the county's moratorium has impacted the Cherry Point facility's ability to compete for capital investment. You are having an impact. You've said repeatedly that this moratorium is intended to protect existing jobs in the UGA. But in practicality, the moratorium has the opposite impact. Permitting uncertainty can be the death knell of a project. And the proposed comprehensive plan amendments would significantly alter the permitting process in Whatcom County. The SEPA process works. Why would you change it? If the county truly wanted to encourage safe, reliable industrial operations within the Cherry Point UGA, you would be doing everything in your power to encourage modernization, rather than driving investment to other facilities through capricious changes to the existing permitting process. Once again, I'm asking you to please reject the moratorium and restore the rights of landowners and businesses within the Cherry Point UGA. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Robert Earl, Mike Sennett, Jean Carmen, Hilary Cole, Judith Aikens. Sorry. Please move forward.
Mike Sennett, Bellingham. I signed myself in. Good evening, council and fellow citizens. First, a moment of silence for Telequa, a.k.a. Orca J35 and her dead calf. I feel her grieving is a great mourning for all that has been lost in the Salish Sea. The herring, the salmon, the orcas killed and kidnapped in Penn Cove. I perceive in her desolation a dire warning of greater losses to be suffered in the Salish Sea. For us humans on shore, it's fossil fuel export moratorium time again, that administrative equinox of our well-intentioned attempts to protect the Salish Sea in our county. In this chamber, we often hear of the harm inflicted by the moratorium. So how have the supposed victims been doing? Very well, according to my sources at the Oil Sands Weekly. BP just spent $10.5 billion to acquire BHP Billiton's shale holdings in Texas and Louisiana. BP is planning to spend $5 to $6 billion to buy back U.S. stocks in 2018 and 2019. Phillips 66 is refining at 100% capacity and earned $1.32 billion in the second quarter this year. If they aren't investing in the refineries here in Whatcom County, I don't think it's the moratorium's fault. The moratorium is all the more critical because of the contest we are caught up in. The players are Trudeau and Trump, and the stakes are who can do the most damage to the planet. The bitumen boy now owns the pipeline, already pushing toxic sludge here. The Albertans are producing a glut of tar sands oil that may be aimed at Cherry Point beyond refinery capacity. That means export. Meanwhile, under the banner of energy dominance, the U.S. government is into submission to every fossil fuel industry wish. Items may include congressional action to end treaty rights, overturn the Magnuson Act, and preempt our Washington state regulations banning the fourth pier at Cherry Point. We shouldn't forget that the Donald digs coal. Will Commander Zinke fire up the Wayback Machine for Mr. Peabody and order another assault on Cherry Point? That must be considered a possibility. Our refusal to further endanger the Salish Sea is more important than ever as threats from the fossil fuel industry multiply as production increases and Asia's appetite for petroleum products grows. I don't believe that Whatcom County should take
30
on the
seconds,
risks
please.
of feeding that demand in order to maximize short-term profits for the industry. The council must necessarily consider local economics effects of its actions. I understand that, but it also has a chance to confront the greater planetary crisis that's occurring in front of our very eyes. We cannot escape the smoke, heat, and drought of the climate crisis, and I hope the council sees that and does something by extending the moratorium. Thank you.
My name is Clara Jean Carmine.
I live at 1113 Chuckanet Drive, Bellingham. This weekend, a friend forwarded a well-researched article from the New York Times Magazine entitled Losing Earth, the Decade We Almost Stopped Climate Change. It details, almost ad nauseum, the chances we had during 1979 to 1989 to reverse climate change. But their final statement is what stuck, and I hope will stick with you, and it was, almost nothing stood in our way except ourselves. This is the way I view the need to preserve Cherry Point and its aquatic reserve from destruction. Almost nothing stands in our way except ourselves. Newspapers carry the image of Orca J35 carrying her dead baby, and the world mourns. Why? An emergency effort is underway to save the baby's dying sibling. Why? Salmon has been known to be the major food of orcas for decades. And we know that salmon are dependent on herring and the spawning grounds like that at Cherry Point. We know that they also need clean water and minimal noise from boats. Almost nothing stands in our way but ourselves. Orcas are not the only species threatened by current proposals for infrastructure and increased shipping of unrefined fossil fuels by train and pipeline, which would increase tanker traffic in the narrow passages of the Salish Sea sevenfold. A major tanker leak would devastate our already threatened sea and estuaries, and burning oil cars are not an unheard of problem. What also is at risk, our $4 billion fish and shellfish industry, our growing $2 billion tourist industry, which depends on orcas, beach walking, and in addition, human life and health. Having lost 3 children who were playing and or fishing in Whatcom Falls Park along the creek, we know more than most communities that a pipeline break can be devastating. If the leak had occurred a half mile away, an entire middle school might have been wiped out. That
30
happened to be
seconds,
my
please.
granddaughter's middle school. Almost nothing stands in our way but us. At a minimum, I think you need to ban all shipment, storage, and transport of unrefined fossil fuels through this county, and to do a thorough environmental impact and public safety study before any new permits for infrastructure, including new or modified piers
Time.
or use, be granted. And the commitment to working with Native American governments must be maintained. Almost nothing stands in our way but us. Thank you.
Hilary Cole, Judith Aikens, Deirdre Morgan, Nathaniel Maddox, and Krista Romo.
Hi, my name is Hilary Cole. I live in Bellingham. It's important to approve this moratorium. It's important to do so that you have time to put needed protections in place to protect safety, health, and environmental health. People here talk about Cherry Point jobs. Well, yes, it is important to have a good paying job. But you know what? I care more about our collective future, my daughter's future. And someone mentioned California is burning up. Well, I have in-laws that have had their childhood home burned down last week in a raging fire in California that started because of global warming. I strongly support the moratorium. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for taking comments. My name is Judith Aikens, and I live in Whatcom County in Bellingham. I'm a chairperson of the Mount Baker Group. We represent 1,715 members in Whatcom County. We fully support your continued vigilance protecting our community. We urge you to extend the moratorium and to complete and approve the draft ordinance revising the Cherry Point UGA zoning code to ensure protections for our community from the burden of risk and adverse impacts on health and safety from transporting heavy crude oil and other hazardous materials through Whatcom County. We also urge you to strengthen standards for protection project permits in the Cherry Point UGA. Permits for upgrades must require the state, the SEPA, and the EIS, the Environmental Impact Statement Review, of cumulative impacts with greenhouse gas life cycle analysis, total mitigation of climate pollution, and conditions to require no adverse impacts on herring, salmon, orca, and other endangered species. Previously, facilities at Cherry Point were permitted without any meaningful review or recognition of environmental impacts, including their permitting of 2 oil-by-rail uploading facilities in 2013, which introduced the ongoing risk of oil train explosions in communities, our community, along the railroad, without any environmental impact studies being conducted. We find this unacceptable that our county officials would put the public at risk without any questions about risk being occurred. The revised zoning code could greatly improve the permitting process and outcomes. Sierra Club supports a just transition from fossil fuels to renewable clean energy and opposes projects that will extend our reliance on fossil fuels when we need to be transitioning to clean energy. Exporting unrefined products does not create good-paying jobs here. Increased production of carbon products while ignoring new carbon product development diverts investments into our cleaner future. We need to be focusing on attracting businesses that will employ our citizens long into the future with good-paying jobs and allow us to live and recreate in an unpolluted environment.
30 seconds, please.
Thank you for listening, and I have an extended, I sent you an email today, and I also made copies for you with the comments extended. Thank you very much.
Deirdre Morgan, Nathaniel Maddox, Krista Romo, Yuri, Kent Murray.
Hi there, thank you. I'm Deirdre Morgan. I've lived in Whatcom County 40 years, and I've lived down in Southside Fairhaven for the last 37. I am not as prepared to speak. I did not realize I had signed up. But so I reflect back on those 40 years. The years when my friend could go outside of Bellingham Bay, just outside for a day's fishing, and bring home a 7 or 8 pound sockeye without thinking about it. Those were the days. We don't see those size of fish anymore. We instead have dying orcas. We have such a reduced level of clear skies in those 40 years. Such an increase in traffic that I used to ride my bike from my place to downtown office, where I held a professional career for 25 years. 17 minutes. It takes me 5 minutes in a car just to get through Fairhaven these days. Most of this is from traffic. Driving on I-5 is a nightmare. We're going down to simply meet family members for a day or is impossible almost to see my neurologist down there for the traffic. So this continues, and we lose our orca whales. We lose our ability to simply find a beach to sit on. We lose our sunsets. We have lost so much of this, and we speak about a few hundred, I'll give it 1,000 jobs in the industry, but we're talking about trains that I listen to every night, 5 or 6. Edgemore that has finally asked them to reduce their pulling of the whistle because the sound is so incredible. The chance to sleep through a night without hearing a train come through in Southside, impossible. We have this track that runs all across the bay. Derailment, easily done. We have rock slides that we know shut down these train lines regularly. And we have many of those up and down. The trains can't even get through in the wintertime. I am so opposed to even thinking about continuing on this insane level when I can remember Jimmy Carter giving his speeches when I was a teenager about reducing our use.
30 seconds, please.
We've lost a critical amount of time. I do not feel we can continue to lose this critical amount of time that we have left if we haven't already gone by it. I support the moratorium continues. And I would hope very strongly that we get that moratorium as a permanent situation for our ability to bring in good-paying jobs is a potential if we think intelligently. And our potential of losing our county and so many of its resources in the next 20 years. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nathaniel Maddox, Recording Secretary of Local Lodge 2379 of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. Our local lodge represents over 600 hourly employees at the Alcoa and Talco Works facility at Cherry Point. And no, we're not directly in your crosshairs today, but time to speak up is now. Our fight is for the middle class in Whatcom County, and Cherry Point Industries directly supply over 2,100 jobs, and 11% of the jobs in this county are directly related to Cherry Point activity. Not low-wage jobs, family-wage jobs. And we aren't asking for deregulation in any form. We're asking for the ability to use the system that is already in place, a balanced, reasonable permitting system. Businesses in Whatcom County need the ability to evolve with the global economy. We love our home and we do the job clean. With our hands on the reins, we are environmentally responsible. But a moratorium is the equivalent of shooting the horse instead. The action of this council seems to point to the elimination of the middle class, leaving only the affluent and those who serve them. And as a father trying to provide a future for his children, and as a tax-paying voting citizen, I refuse to let that happen. Let this moratorium die.
Please no comments of applause or disagreement from the audience.
Clapping,
Thank you.
no clapping.
My name is Krista Romo. I live near Everson. First, just want to thank you all for all of the work that you've put into developing an ordinance to have some more permanent protections for our community and for extending this current moratorium several times already. It's important that you've been working on protecting our community from unnecessary increases in public health and safety risk that would accompany unrefined fossil fuel export. And I encourage you to stay true to the original intent and continue prioritizing the health and safety of the overall community and the environment as you proceed. I want to reflect on the push by Cherry Point Industries and employees to reframe this debate as a need to make a compromise between our community's health and safety and the need for family wage jobs. I want to remind all of you that there are quite a lot of people here and in the community who would like to see much bolder, quicker action to scale down our production and use of fossil fuels and to invest in the alternatives before it's too late. So many people in Whatcom County would prefer that a plan be put in place to immediately invest in the create of family wage green jobs, and to provide job retraining for fossil fuel industry workers. We would prefer to see the corporations at Cherry Point have a plan in place to scale down employment and production, to halt the training of new employees for work in the fossil fuel industry, and to scale down production as the existing workforce retires. To many of us, the current approach of allowing status quo activity at Cherry Point is already a compromise that is risking our future and the future of the following generations. So don't be fooled by those who would like you to believe that there is a need to further compromise our future. Whatcom County is facing immense challenges around affordable housing and good paying jobs, to be sure. We're all feeling it. But preserving a future for industries that are putting all of our livelihoods and future into peril is not the right way to address those issues. Thank you.
Good evening, Whatcom County Council. My name is Kent Murray, and I've been a Whatcom County resident for 30 years since 1988. I presently work for VECA Professional Services, but have been employed by many of the engineering firms in Whatcom County and even my own company. For 30 years, refineries have been providing me a living wage job. I am considered the peripheral or the second tier of employment, not the direct employment, and the refineries provide it. I love what I do. I love going into work every day. I really enjoy it. Don't take that away from me. Now, I'm a single guy, but I'm paying over $6,000 a year in property taxes. Without a refinery job, I would be taxed out of my home. Add insult to injury, The council has used $150,000 of these tax dollars to consult with an attorney on the legal ways of putting me out of a job. Yes, it is the money. Now, I did hear a radio blurb where one of you touted protecting jobs. Maybe you want to protect minimum wage jobs, but you are doing nothing to bring living wage jobs to the county. I'm doing my part. I drive an electric car with a gas generator for backup. I pay $1.50 in coal plant electricity and $1.50 in gasoline for my daily commute of 63 miles. I would not be able to make the round trip on electricity alone because the overnight charge would take too long. Anyway, thank you for listening to me. I'm one of the refinery workers. Thank you.
Eddie Uri, Stuart Pennington, Adam, I think it's Banham or Boham, Chris Watrobka, and Mary Tully.
Good evening. I'm Eddie Uri. I'm the Clean Energy Program Manager at Resources for Sustainable Communities. As I said at the last meeting, I really wish we'd have a moratorium in place that actually put a hold on projects at Cherry Point. Because whether or not you renew this one, we're still having, hundreds of millions of dollars of upgrade projects going through there. Just last week, BP built a loading dock at the Cherry Point Beach where they would have built that coal terminal in order to unload equipment coming to install a new coker heater, which is going to expand their production capacity by 4%. And I wish that the state had required best available control technology on that project to control air pollution, but they're not. The thing is, if we were requiring higher standards, that's actually more jobs, more investments in the refinery, in reducing pollution for the betterment of everyone in the community. But that's not your job to control refinery operations, air pollution control. That's not your job. Your job is permitting projects and protecting the shoreline, and the county plays an important role, being the first point of process for permits and making a SEPA determination and deciding on whether or not a shoreline permit should be allowed. And the reason we're here having this conversation, instead of having a conversation about how to bring clean energy jobs to Whatcom County, that's what I want to talk about, but we're here talking about this because the county for the last 60 years has given a green light and a free pass to everything that these industries ever wanted to do. Not only have you said yes to everything, you've never required an environmental impact statement or a shoreline permit on any of these marine terminals. And there's been consequences to that. The destruction of the local fisheries has been a consequence of that. That's a lot of jobs lost that have existed for much longer than oil refining and could exist for much longer. And a great example is 5 years ago, you permitted these oil train terminals that are still bringing these trains to town. County looked at it, they said, non-significant, green light, here's your permits. Thing is, it was significant. The risks of bringing 1 million barrels a week of oil by rail on trains that the National Transportation Safety Board predicted would explode and then proceeded to explode a dozen times in the 3 years after these things were permitted, that's a significant risk and impact to our community that I think is unreasonable. In other counties, like down in Vancouver, Washington, there was 2 oil terminals there that were proposed and then were not built because they did do an EIS, they did look at the impacts, and they determined that they were unmitigable, unreasonable, adverse, and a threat to public health and safety, and those projects have been rejected. But the other hook here that you really need to address in your
30
code is the
seconds,
problem
please.
that these industries don't like to take no for an answer. So if you were like Cowlitz County that rejected the coal terminal proposed down there, you do it in accordance with the law and the policy, you're going to get tied up in years and years of court appeals over that because they just don't like taking no. So you really need to straighten things out upfront and clear. What are our limits? Applies to everyone blanket. There's no special favors here. What are the limits we're willing to accept to public safety and to pollution and destruction of the environment?
Time.
We got to draw the line somewhere. Thank you very much.
Please don't, please avoid clapping.
My name's Stuart Pennington. I live out at Point Whitehorn on Birch Bay. I'm here in opposition to continuing this temporary ban. It's 5 times, I think it's becoming pretty permanent. You have a moral and legal obligation to do something, to make a decision. You're kicking the can down the road. And just to echo the young lady from Phillips 66, propane and butane are final products. So I don't know how many people are up here are chemical engineers or work in refining? None? Okay. So what you really need to consider is what is the tax base without Alcoa, BP, and Phillips 66? How many dollars do Alcoa, BP, and Phillips 66 pay in taxes in Whatcom County? Like the other gentleman, I pay $6,000 a year to live in my house, and it would be a whole lot higher if these people aren't around. And a lady said earlier that these jobs aren't going to get up and walk off. I come from a town in Oregon where the jobs got up and walked off. Weyerhaeuser, International Paper, Georgia Pacific, and then there were small local mills too. And they're all gone. And it's all related to regulation. I was looking for a definition of unrefined products tonight. I think you guys know my feeling on that. I don't think you're on firm legal ground in this matter. I think you're in direct contravention to the Commerce Clause. I think you're stepping on federal toes, and you're going to cost all of us, whether you're for or against this, money in the long run. And somebody else said businesses are reluctant to invest dollars where they have reason to doubt the return on their capital employed, and that's true. Every individual unit competes for dollars. And they look internally as well, at even within the own operations. I used to run a large terminal in Los Angeles, and we had 100 Teamster drivers. When was the last time you people saw an ARCO truck running up and down the highway? It's been years. They got rid of the private fleet because they found somebody else because they couldn't compete any longer. Okay, so when somebody says these jobs are not going away, that's just wrong. And somebody talked about
30 seconds, please.
preserving their lifestyle. Those industries out there allow people to have the lifestyles we all enjoy here. Nobody in here is for dirty air or putting people out on the street. You know, it's a false choice. And if people in here support good paying jobs, they should support the expansion out at Cherry Point to handle the gentleman that mentioned there was more crude oil coming. Wouldn't you rather handle it here in America than have it handled overseas where there aren't any regulations? Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam Burham, Chris Wetropka, Mary Tully, Brian Ferguson, Tim Johnson, and Paul Gallivan.
Good evening. Christopher Wetropka. I'm a business agent for Ironworkers Local 86 out of Seattle. Currently live in Seattle, but for about 6 years before I took this position, I was a member of, lived up in Whatcom County up in Linden. I represent about 2,500 active members out of Local 86. Not all of them are Whatcom County residents, but they do have the option to come up here and do work in the refinery up in this area. I'll keep this short. I ask that you do not pass your ordinance tonight extending the moratorium on the fossil fuel permits at Cherry Point. I also ask that you stop your efforts to change the Whatcom County comp plan and zoning for Cherry Point. The current regulations governing Cherry Point have served Whatcom County well and do not need to be changed. We need to be working on how to attract new companies to Whatcom. Your current activities will only drive them away, and we ask you to please reconsider listening. Listen to the working men and women of Whatcom County who depend on these good wage jobs at Cherry Point. We feel that your actions will cost jobs for the families in the future. That's all I have for you tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Good evening. My name is Adam Bonham. I'm an iWorker for Local 86. I'm here today asking that you not extend the fossil fuel permit moratorium and stop your proposed changes to the comp plan and county code. The existing regulations and permits required have worked well for many years. Please do not limit Cherry Point companies with unnecessary job-killing regulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mary Tully. I'm a resident of Whatcom County, living near the north end of Lake Whatcom. I'm currently an office manager at a local institution of higher education. I previously worked for the Army Corps of Engineers on complex environmental services contracts. I try to stay informed on some local issues and make time to come in once or twice a year to speak on something that I care about. Tonight, I'm here to ask the council to approve the ordinance to impose an interim moratorium on the acceptance and processing of applications and permits for new activity at Cherry Point. The way I see it, it's at the very least a do no harm decision. It allows current activities at Cherry Point to continue at its existing level while preventing an increase in the risks and dangers associated with this industry's operations. I'm not a big worrier, but I know that with an increase in fossil fuel activity comes an increase in the chance that there would be a spill or disaster and an increase in the magnitude and impact of such an event. At this point, we already have a number and variety of other threats to the health and safety of our ecosystem here in Whatcom County, so I think it's unacceptable to knowingly accept any increase in risk. An accident involving oil can easily wreck the ecosystem for years to come. In my previous work, I saw that contaminated sites are an unending nightmare. Health issues, cancer cluster investigations, cleanups performed over the course of decades, multiple contracts, millions of dollars spent, all this, but still the site and people would never be the same. In the permit application process that I've seen over the years, I'm always frustrated with either the non-existent or vapid environmental impact statements that conclude, oh, all's good, these are professionals, nothing bad will happen, and if it does, there'll be some fines or the appearance of some remedial action. Our locale is recognized regionally and nationally as uniquely beautiful, but that can quickly change, and if it does, there will be negative impacts to the health and economy of our population. Any increase in fossil fuel project activity should be examined seriously against a long-term vision for our region. I think it's possible for us to have an increase in economic activity without expansion at Cherry Point. I hope any county code revisions will clearly and truly prioritize the safety of potentially impacted residents and the environment. But simply for now, please approve the moratorium. I thank you for listening to me this evening and for all the other work you do.
Thank you, Megan.
Brian Ferguson, Tim Johnson, Paul Gallivan, Tony Larson, Natasha Ramming, and Brooke Sanderson.
I'm Brian Ferguson, Custer, Washington. I would like y'all to say no to the interim moratorium. The refineries here, I've been on the road for part of my 23 years as a pipe fitter, journeyman, and the refineries here in Washington State are the cleanest I've ever been, that I've ever seen of any refineries. They're kept clean. Any spills are treated as cleaned it up now. People being unsafe are shown the door. These are the cleanest refineries. You can't get people who care more about the environment and work in a place doing what they do. Now, I've seen Weyerhaeuser leave the area, and I've heard enough people talk about no expansion at all for these refineries. And if they can't expand, then they can't make new products for new standards. Why would they want to be here? They'll go the same way as Weyerhaeuser. And if I was a company and I was looking for a place to build a new facility, why would I want to build it here? Where we've chased out a Weyerhaeuser, we've chased out a prize horse, given us good middle-class jobs. Why would they want to come here? We should be trying to pull in new companies, not trying to strangle out the companies that we have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, council members. My name is Tim Johnson. I work at the Phipps 66 Fernhill Refinery as an environmental team leader. My wife and I and our family have lived in Whatcom County for 14 years. We've grown to love working here and living here, and have been blessed to be involved in the community in many different ways. We feel personally invested in this county. So the council's apparent bias against the fossil fuel industry is extremely disappointing to us. And I'm here tonight to speak in opposition to the moratorium. The moratorium adversely affects the ability of businesses within the Cherry Point urban growth area to be competitive by creating restrictions and uncertainties that will threaten the long-term viability of our businesses. The moratorium distinctly disadvantages the two Whatcom County refineries within the area against the competitors elsewhere in the state. It disadvantages my refinery, which must compete internally with other Phillips 66 refineries for investment dollars from our company. Investments that are needed for our business to safely provide the reliable energy that every one of us depends on and will continue to rely upon for decades. In my role at Phillips 66, I've been involved in a number of permitting actions done through the Whatcom County Planning and Development Services. The county's existing process is robust, and it does work. It provides opportunity for the community, agencies, and other stakeholders to consider and engage on proposed projects. Future projects at Cherry Point should each be evaluated on its own merits, not roundly prohibited by an overreaching policy that puts these businesses at a competitive disadvantage over others in the state. For these reasons, I request that the council not extend the moratorium, restore the rights of the businesses and landowners located at Cherry Point to pursue permits and their applications of permits under the Whatcom County codes. Thank you for consideration of my comments.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening. Paul Gallivan, Local 70 Carpenters. I'm also in the military. I've been in 17 and a half years. And I just want to commend you on the job you've done for the refineries to date. Have, as a gentleman before me has said, they're the cleanest running refineries you're going to find around. And it basically comes from this community that has also stepped forward on a regular basis to let each other know how important the economy is, or how important the natural life is around here. So to clear it up, I'm actually here against the fossil fuel permit memorandum, moratorium, correction. The current regulations are enough. I don't think that we need to keep going any further with prohibiting these businesses from coming in here and being able to do their business without safe checks. And those safe checks are in place, and they are working appropriately. Cherry Point, let's talk to the other point, is also contributing to the budget here in this area. $200 million is quite a bit of money for the budget, going into schools, going into first responders, going into the roads, being able to take care of our community on a day-to-day basis. I don't know what's been going on with the budget, but it's got to be a little bit tight, because it's hard to see some of these roads deteriorating the way they are, and people being able to go to the top-end schools here in our community. I hope you guys reconsider to stop with the moratorium.
Thank you, Paul.
Bernie Larson, Natasha Ramming, Brooks Anderson, Andrietta Douglas, Hannah Holt, and then Bill Holt.
Hi, my name is Natasha Raming, and I am from Bellingham, Fairhaven. I'm here to support the approval of ordinance AB 2018-077B. I hope I got that right. We're talking about the moratorium. My support of this ordinance comes from much consideration, including statistics available for current and projected rates of job growth, as documented by the United States Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor and Statistics. These statistics indicate that current and future growth in jobs is not in the industry types that are currently located in the Cherry Point urban growth area. And I think that's very important to consider that, and we've heard many people speak about how it's important to move to a place where we have economic diversity that is sustainable in the face of, economic downturns. Basically, we don't want to have all our eggs in one basket. I actually wrote my comment in email and sent it to you, including links to the statistics that I viewed, if you're interested in looking at that. One of the other things that I would like to touch on is the environmental health piece. And as we know, environmental health has to do with how our environment affects our health. And the environment has a significant impact on a variety of chronic disease, including lung disease, heart disease, stroke, I mean, you name it, just go down the list, it really takes a toll. And the reason why I bring this up is because we have a 41% ALICE population, which is asset limited income constrained. And if we can create a more diverse economy that's fitting for the variety of people that are here, you know, if we consider that the focus on oil, gas, agriculture has pretty much led us to where we are now. And we have, in 2016, a 41% ALICE population. We have people struggling to afford housing. You guys all know about that. Those people are also on state-funded and federally funded health care. And that health care also takes away from a state general funds, from what I understand. And when we are keeping industry in the area that actually has an impact on our health, we're all paying for it. Like, we might get some sort of benefit from the tax revenues here, and I totally get the idea of like job security and a sustaining wage.
30
Totally.
seconds, please.
But when we are actually like at a net loss because we're paying out as a result of these industries' effects, that's a huge problem for us, and healthcare, as you know, is a huge financial burden. And we have some major crises going on in the area in regards to healthcare needs. So I hope you will look at the big picture and consider those things, and also have the courage to stand your ground, because it's very true. There are some very wealthy industries, you know, that are interested in this area.
Time.
So we have faith in you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Tony Larson from the Whatcom Business Alliance. Earlier today, I was at a business roundtable. It was put on by the Boys and Girls Club, and there was Hart Hodges from Economics Department up at Western, and a bunch of industry folks were there. The whole focus was they wanted input from the business community relating to their 5-year strategic plan. And one of the questions that they asked was concerns that the business community has, you know, over the next 5+ years. And really, the consensus was clear, and it could really be best summed up by a study from 2016 by Wall Street 24/7. And some of you may remember this. It was reported, I think, in the Bellingham Herald. But they called Bellingham one of the least affordable cities in the country, and it was in the top 50 worst cities. But the criteria they used was, and the one that really put Bellingham, Whatcom County on the map, was that the median home value of $303,000 at the time was 7.3 times the average income, the median income, which was $42,000. So since then, that was 2016. Since then, the median home price has gone to $400,000. So what we all know is that Whatcom County is a great place to live when you have a good job and when you own a home. If you don't, it really is not, and it's a huge challenge. Everybody recognizes it. The question is, you know, what we're going to do about it. And really, I think one of the questions is, how are we going to attract jobs? How are we going to get wages increasing in Whatcom County? Because they're certainly not keeping up with the costs. We have a new economic development director at the Port of Bellingham. He's got a very difficult job. And part of what I would ask is, a gentleman earlier mentioned Tesla, the battery company in Nevada. If they were interested in expanding and they wanted to be at Cherry Point, why would any company, even those that everybody in this room would agree that it would be great local employers, why would they try to get a project off the ground at Cherry Point, especially given the climate, or at least the perceived from some of the regulatory decisions that are being made? And I would just suggest that you're very focused on the language and in the suggested comp plan code and rule amendments with respect to the Cherry Point UGA about what you don't want. But what we don't hear is, what do you want for Cherry Point? And is it possible with these updates that we're considering? How can you make it more valuable and viable community asset out there? What is your vision for that? You know, that's what we don't hear. There's a lot of people in the community talking about that. How will these actions that you're taking encourage or deter future potential employers? And the Whatcom Business Alliance does not support the 5th extension of this moratorium. And I would just ask, it seems that these restrictions will certainly curtail activity and investment at Cherry Point, but they'll also likely deter any new, perhaps desirable activity out there as well. So I just ask that you'd consider that, especially as you start moving into some of the code and the comp plan amendments.
My name is Brooks Anderson, and first of all, I want to say, Rudd, I'm glad to see you standing up after the primaries. I mean, for all of us, that was, even for those of us who weren't running, that was a task, but thank you for being here tonight, and running in the primary.
I have to stop you. I'm sorry. I appreciate the thought, but we can't use the auditorium for a discussion of campaigns. Thank you.
Okay. So next, what I'd like to say is that I would like to applaud all of the county council for addressing this issue and knowing how difficult it's been and knowing how controversial it's been with whether or not you could withstand the criticism about whether you had the authority or not the authority. Took a lot of courage, and I'm really grateful for you to take a stand on this because I think it's extremely important to Whatcom County and those of us who live here. Secondly, I would like to ask a show of hands, how many of you read the New York Times online? Not that many. I read it every morning, and I have just been stunned by the amount of advertising that BP does on the New York Times over and over again about how wonderful they are at Cherry Point and the contribution to our community, $1.5 billion. They talk about the boys club and the girls club in Ferndale. It's a little makes me feel a little being coerced, even though I never look at the ad. Over and over again it shows up. So while I do believe there's a lot of revenue that comes from the industries that are currently there, I don't really feel like they are the only industries that could be there. And the fact that you have put a moratorium on the expansion of the particular things without taking away the jobs that are currently there, I think is great. And I want to be really clear that I support you not only extending this moratorium, but making it permanent.
30 seconds, please.
Oh, my goodness. So what I really would like to encourage you to do is, as I know you are, this has been going on for years now that we've done this, but let's look for other industries and other ways that we can make use of and be productive at Cherry Point without destroying all of the other possibilities in terms of the environment and the other industries that are dependent upon it. Thank you.
You, Brooks.
Andrea Douglas, Hannah Holt, Bill Holt, Michael Roach, Tristan Cassidy, and Michael Petrich.
My name is Andrea Douglas. I live in Bellingham right now. I used to live up in Burch Bay on the edge of the blast zone next to BP. And I gave you an article. You may have already seen it. It says in 2016, Portland, and I'm an RN, a retired RN, 18 years in intensive care, 14 in home health and hospice, 9 years as a case manager for people with heart failure and COPD, master's level. In 2016, Portland's City Council voted unanimously to prohibit new fossil fuel infrastructure such as oil and gas terminals. In late July, the Oregon Supreme Court declined to review a January 2018 ruling by the Oregon Court of Appeals that upheld the constitutionality of Portland's fossil fuel terminal zoning amendments. This is good news because it underlines your ability to safeguard the health and safety of this county. In January, the Oregon Court of Appeals reversed, in large part, a Land Use Board of Appeals decision that had invalidated Portland's landmark fossil fuel terminal zoning amendments. The appeals court ruled that Portland's code did not violate the Dormant Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution and that it is a legitimate exercise of government authority to act to protect the health and safety of Portland residents from the dangers of the fossil fuel industry. The courts have affirmed that Portland and other communities can implement innovative protections to counter threats to human safety, human health and safety from dangerous fossil fuel infrastructure, stated Regna Merritt of Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibilities. This precedent will allow much greater creativity from cities and counties that want to create safe, healthy, and sustainable communities for the residents. I'm thankful that you have had this moratorium. I encourage you to continue it. I hope that you will make it permanent. I'm sure that you all know that we have a very high cancer rate in this county. We and Skagit both have very high rates. There's about 5 counties with very high rates, all on the coast. In addition to that, you probably already know that our fire risk here is very high. It's high in all of the counties in western Washington, except for Pacific County. We
30
are
seconds, please.
very close to having the same kind of fire risk that California has, and it's due to global warming, according to 97% of scientists. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, so my name is Hannah Holt, and I'm an apprentice at the Laborers Local 292. And I'm actually a second generation in the refinery, and that's actually my dad. So I started out, before I worked here, I started about a couple months ago, and I worked as a barista, and I wasn't making nearly enough. I had very off and on hours. My dad and my mom was very grateful that they were helping me pay my bills, and my dad actually got me to get into the union, and he actually got me there. And I'm only 20 years old, and for me being 20, I mean, my best decision in life is starting the union. It's by far, I've seen a great change in my life. I'm paying off my college debt. I'm happy to be able to be there and be able to go through that. And I actually think it's a great opportunity for money-wise payments, bills. So these changes could create a chilling effect on future economic investment, economic growth, and jobs in Whatcom County. Currently, the economy is good, but we need a vibrant Cherry Point to secure all our futures. If Cherry Point companies are not allowed to grow and make business decisions based on changing market conditions, they will cease to be competitive, and the county will suffer severe setbacks in its job growth and tax revenues. Cherry Point industries are critical to the economic health of Whatcom County. They provide thousands of family wage jobs, over $200 million in annual tax revenue, and over $1 million per year to important charities in our community. I urge you to support Whatcom Community Industries and focus on policies that balance economic opportunity and prosperity with environmental stewardship, safety, and improvements in Whatcom County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Council. Thank you for giving me the time to speak this evening. I'm Bill Holt, and I'm a proud member of Laborers Local 292. I'm here today asking that you not extend the fossil fuel permit moratorium and stop your proposed changes to the comp plan and county code. Cherry Point companies are critical to the economic health of our community. Cherry Point companies create over 22,100 family wage jobs that pay on an average of $114,000 a year. Cherry Point companies generate over $200 million in annual tax revenues that fund our schools, emergency services, and other important social services. Cherry Point companies contribute over $1 million annually to local charities that contributions support essential local charities like the Boys and Girls Clubs of the United Way and the Red Cross. I urge you not to pursue the unnecessary permit changes for the industries in Whatcom County. The existing regulations are enough. On a personal note, I work in the refineries and I've worked many other jobs. I've never been to a job that had such a safety culture that I feel in the Cherry Point refineries, the way they do it is better than anyone else. So much so, I allow my daughter to work there. I'm not in fear for her life whatsoever. When I was asking about what to say and try to get some facts and brought up, one of the best things I heard was a man told me if you took a drone and you had it over the Pacific Northwest and you zoomed out and you seen the refineries, you'd see it coexisting with the nature, the trails, the boats, the fishing, the hiking, the cows, the animals. And so with that, I don't think we need a moratorium. I think we should be on the cover of Refined magazine titled Doing It Right.
Thank you.
So that's Michael Roach, Tristan Cassidy, Michael Petrich, Jack McBride, and then Chris, I think it's Coley.
Good evening.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to express my concerns tonight. My name is Michael Roach. I am with Local 292. I urge you this evening not to pass the fossil fuel permit moratorium and to not move forward with your changes to the Whatcom Comp Plan and the Whatcom County Code. Your proposed changes are unnecessary at this existing Cherry Point regulations have served this community well for decades. Cherry Point companies not only provide thousands of family wage jobs and pay hundreds of millions in taxes to fund schools and other critical services, but they are also good corporation citizens that are committed to improving the environment in Whatcom. A couple examples I have found in the BP has restored 221 acres of wetlands in Whatcom County. And in cooperation with the Nooksack Salmon Enhancement Association, BP is also instrumental in the Terrell Creek salmon habitat enhancement and streams stewards programs by resorting 2,200 feet of the Terrell Creek buffer. We need to support these companies that support Whatcom County. Please don't drive them away. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. Michael Petrus, Anacortes, Washington. I come to you tonight as a member of Carpenters Local 70 out of Mount Vernon, representing 1,800 carpenters and our families in 5 northern counties of Puget Sound. Additionally, we have several hundred members who live and work in Whatcom County. Our members have worked on numerous projects which include Bellingham Airport, expansion of Western Washington University, hotels, businesses on the waterfront, construction of new homes, and recently a new water treatment facility in Fairhaven, and projects at BP and ConocoPhillips. The reason I'm here today is to speak in support of the refinery employees and against the moratorium. The moratorium on the refinery exports are not in the best interest of the community as it limits job growth and economic expansion. The incomes, livelihood, professions, and tax revenue generated by those who are employed in the refineries will be directly impacted on the authorization of building permits for the job creators in our region. It is time for this body to support local families, businesses, and industries, rather than outside interests which do nothing to support a local economy. It is my hope that you would choose wisely and make the right decision in granting permits to the permit process to continue and support the oil and gas industry, which creates so many jobs and opportunities to live and work in our region. There are numerous carpenters, pipe fitters, electricians, iron workers, operating engineers, laborers out of Local 292, members of the United Steelworkers who are counting on this body to choose prosperity, quality of life, and stewards our environment that ends the moratorium and provides for our families, our communities, and our futures. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. My name is Jack McBride, and I live in Bellingham. I want to speak on behalf of a continuation of the moratorium on the expansion of the piers at Cherry Point and in favor of a comprehensive long-range plan for Whatcom County based on the recommendations made in the Cascadia Law Group report. When considering how to implement any protective measures, the Shoreline Management Act appears to be the strongest basis for the county to establish meaningful review and approval processes for expansion of the piers and their utilization. The urgency of this activity has been magnified substantially by what's happening all around us. For example, the U.S. has now become the second largest exporter of oil products after Saudi Arabia, which signifies a growing focus on markets outside the U.S. Canada has taken over the ownership of the Kinder Morgan Trans Mountain Pipeline, including the Puget Sound Pipeline. The Canadian government plans to expand the pipeline, including the U.S. spur that runs through our county from Sumas to Cherry Point, in order to maximize their international sales of tar sands oil from Alberta. Tar sands oil is the world's dirtiest fossil fuel to produce, refine, and burn. It is also the most dangerous to ship and handle because spills are virtually impossible to clean up. Still, for economic and political reasons, Canada plans to increase their shipments of this awful stuff by 7-fold from new facilities in Burnaby. All of the increased oil shipments from BC and Washington ports will increase the tanker traffic in the Salish Sea, from 4 to 5 tankers per month to 1 per day, further threatening the resident orca population even before there is a major tar sands oil spill. The latter event would devastate the seafood industry in our region. Whatcom County residents alone can't stop this parade to environmental destruction, but we should try to slow it down and do everything that we legally can to manage the shipping activity in our coastal waters. If Cherry Point eventually becomes nothing more than a transshipping point, all the refinery jobs will be lost to low-wage Asian nations anyway. Finally, within the last 2 weeks, we've seen how the resident orca population that depend on bountiful salmon runs are struggling to survive. They are the canaries in the coal mine for all of us in this beautiful region. Thank you.
Chris Kohler, Trevor Smith, Mike Llewellyn, and that's the last on the sign-up sheet.
Hi, my name is Tristan Cassidy. I'm with the Laborers Union 292. The Cherry Point refineries, they're what our families depend on. So we can work hard and take our kids to play football and do those things, and all the stuff they do for our community and the schools they help build and fund and everything, and the jobs they provide you guys with the taxes that they pay. We work for them to make our money. You guys work for the tax money to make your money. And so with that being said, without those jobs that they provide us, I wouldn't be able to provide that stuff for my family. And I appreciate them letting me go there and work hard and make the kind of money that we do so we can provide a legacy for our family. Please do not pass the fossil fuel permit moratorium and stop your unnecessary overhaul of permitting at Cherry Point. You're creating way more damage than good. I know you are spending a great deal of effort and tax dollars on the homeless crisis. The working poor are a big part of this problem. One important element of dealing with at issue is having employers that pay good wages. Your misguided agenda for Cherry Point will drive away quality employers and family wage jobs for Whatcom County. Not mention dry up tax revenue to fund programs for our most vulnerable. Economic development is a critical part dealing with housing affordability and homelessness. I urge you to support Whatcom County industries and focus on policies that balance economic opportunity and prosperity with environmental stewardship, safety, and improvements at Cherry Point. Thank you, guys.
Good evening, members of the council and members of the community. My name is Chris Colen from Blaine, Washington. Appreciate the time to be able to speak with you tonight. So I'd like to talk in opposition to the extension of the moratorium. This is what I heard the fifth time that we're doing an extension of the emergency 6-month moratorium. And we're obviously hearing and seeing impacts to the industries as a result of the uncertainty facing the business as a result of this implementation. So I'm aware that there's people here, a segment of the population that would love to see these industries go away forever. The resultant impacts to this county would be significant losses in local tax and support of businesses, nonprofits. We'd also lose a population of highly capable and skilled people who would be great contributors as we work towards a transition in energy. So for years to come, working together is the opportunity that we have in front of us. And if we're willing to continue to talk in a divided way, saying that we have to make a choice between one or the other, we're not going to make any progress at all. So here we are almost 3 years later, still having the same conversation, and we haven't made any progress in the right way. So I think about the time, the money that we spent on this. I mean, I hear tonight people talking in voices and in terms that are much more aligned than they are divided. What we haven't done is come together collectively to make true and impacting change to this county. We know as industries that this change is going to happen in how we use energy and how we power our globe. And we're going to have to work collectively to make that change. But I think we have the resources to do that, both financially and with the right skilled labor and the right engineering resources. We have that capacity and capability to make that change. I hear people talk about big oil launching a PR campaign and how this is just talk about jobs being a PR spin. You've heard from several people here tonight who are feeding their families and supporting this community that aren't PR hacks. We're not bamboozled, and saying such is actually insulting to the people that come here and speak on the behalf of protecting these industries and our jobs. I think it's important for us to think about the time that we've spent over this 3 years, the money and resources we've spent, rather than making influential, impacting change and just having discussions in a divided fashion. So I'd ask that you'd reconsider this moratorium, remove it, allow the businesses to work together with you as a council and other members of this community to make lasting and impactful change. Thank you for your time.
Trevor Smith and then Mike Llewellyn, and if there's anybody else who wishes to speak on this issue, please line up behind these two, otherwise we shall close the public session.
Good evening. Thanks for taking the time to listen to all of us. My name is Trevor Smith. I'm a business agent with Labor's Local 292. You've heard from several of our members tonight, and we represent about 1,280 members that work in the 5 northern counties. For me personally, I live in Bellingham. I live in the Columbia neighborhood. I've lived here a little over 20 years, raised my family here. I've worked in the refineries for 16 of those years. These jobs mean everything. If you're going to buy a house in Bellingham, you have to make more than $13 an hour. You have to make more than $25 an hour to buy a house here. In order to keep this economy alive and to keep this county moving forward, we need living wage jobs. But that's not the only reason. These refineries have done everything they can in order to clean themselves up. They really are the cleanest ones. I've been to Montana, I've been to Colorado, I've been to California. These refineries run cleaner and better, safer processes than just about any other ones I've seen. You guys know about engineering. You guys know about the laws that have been passed. These refineries have tried to stay up ahead of the laws that have been passed. They've tried to clean up their processes, engineer their processes so they're having a smaller carbon footprint. Somebody talked about the 4% increase because of the coker changes. That was an environmental process and a mechanical process and an engineering change so that, yeah, they're more effective, but they're also using less energy, right? So they're lowering their carbon footprint. They're creating a cleaner, better product. They're trying to comply. And the members of Labor's Local 292 and all of the other building trades that have been out here tonight, we build those things. We put the scrubbers on the stacks. We build the PRVs. We build all of the flare towers, and we do all the cleanup. Specifically, Labor's, the environmental cleanup and hazmat cleanup is one of our defined tasks. We don't really want to do it, but we do it. We're certified to do it. We've done everything we can to do these processes correctly and to clean them up the best we can. I remember 20 years ago, people said you'll never be able to clean up this horrible, stinky GP site down at the bay. But you guys did it. It became a super fun site. It got done, and it was done with skilled labor. Now we're doing this, we're trying to be ahead of the game. We're trying to clean up these processes, and we're trying to make sure these refineries and the smelter run as clean as they possibly can. Please don't hinder the way that they're doing things by passing this moratorium and tying their hands and making them not want to be here. We've heard stuff about, well, we should have wind towers, we should have solar farms. Absolutely. We build those all over the country. We'd be more than happy to do that. And there's nothing going on at Cherry Point that prohibits those things from happening
30
now.
seconds, please.
Anyway, please do not pass this moratorium. Please do not put our jobs at risk. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for letting me speak this evening. My name is Mike Llewellyn. I'm a proud member of Labor's Local 292. I'm here to talk about the moratorium on fossil fuel at Cherry Point. I ask you, please do not extend the moratorium. The Lummi tribe's fishing rights are sacred to the tribal members, and I get that. They are the stewards of the Sailor Sea. We need to sit down at the table and discuss how the Cherry Point companies, who also are stewards of the water and the environment. I stand with my brothers and sisters tonight in solidarity, and I also stand with the stewards of the water and the steward. We all need to step back and look at the big picture. How did the Lummi Nation, Whatcom County Council, and Cherry Point refineries do this? You sit at a table and you discuss like people. The refiners are doing a better job of lessening these carbon footprints. Some of the recent projects that one of my other fellow brothers just talked about was one of those things. No one person is a climate denier. We all need to do a better job, but we also need to be realists. You just don't snap your fingers and voila, it's a fix. The just transition from fossil fuel to a cleaner, more renewable energy will happen, but it'll take time. We need to stop standing our ground on whatever side you choose to stand with. We need to stand together as one, and we need to hash out our issues so everybody can keep working. We need to keep the people of Whatcom County working. The middle-class jobs that the refineries create is what keeps the county taxes rolling in to pay for schools, roads, and libraries. We also need to be environmental stewards while the just transition takes place. I have one last thing to ask the council tonight. Have you guys sat, or will you sit with Cherry Point refineries and the businesses out there and try to negotiate and come up with a better environmental plan? That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of the list, so if anybody else wishes to speak, please step forward, or we'll close the open public session.
Hello, I'm Lynn Billington. I live in Bellingham. I've been an environmental engineer for over 35 years. I know Sat Paul from when I worked at the Air Agency. I also worked at the Phipps 66 refinery when BP owned it. And prior to that, I worked in the oil fields for 10 years and a couple summers. My career has been in the environmental engineering field, and I believe that we should extend this moratorium, having looked at both sides of the issue, from both the industry side when I worked there and did permits, and from the air agency side when I looked at our air quality and moved forward. These industry do not know how to deal with oil spills, particularly not the tar sands. I was at work Good Friday when the Exxon Valdez happened. It was a day off for us, but I was working, getting things done. And I saw what it did to the waters there. And then we had the Gulf, the Deepwater Horizon spill, and we saw what it did there. And we do not know how to deal with the tar sands oil. If we have an oil spill of the tar sands, we will not know how to clean it up. We don't know how to clean up the oil spills in moderate waters. So I think that this extending this moratorium is what is the right thing to do, and maybe making it permanent. These refineries will not go away. When I left what is now the Phipps 66 refinery in '95, they were saying the same thing. It's still there. The BP refinery is one of the newest in the U.S. It's the second newest. There's one newer one in Louisiana. It will not go away. It will continue to function until we transition to a different energy, which is probably a bit down the road. So from all my experience that I bring to the table here, I ask you to extend this. Thank you very much. And I have a family and teenagers that I think I want to save the environment for, just like the people that are here to talk about good jobs for their families. I think those jobs will stay here, but we don't want to be exporting crude oil and crude products. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mark Pearson. I've lived in Bellingham for 38 years. I respect both your dedication and the difficulty of the issues that you're regularly presented with. I have two brief comments. A frequent subtext of many of the comments this evening pit short-term against long-term goals. I sincerely hope that the County Council always preferences the long-term. I mean, multi-generational timelines. Please. A completely different comment. Several people have commented tonight that they've stated, and the assumption is built into a lot of the comments, that business growth is essential to survival. This is categorically incorrect. Any organism or organization that requires growth for its survival has written its own death warrant. I sincerely thank you for the work you do for all of us and for our grandchildren. Thank you.
Good evening. I want to thank you for hearing comment at all. My name is Scott Wiley. I live on the Lummi Reservation, owning a home there. My wife and I have just retired. This is my 14th month living in Bellingham, and I'm thrilled to be here. We finished two median income careers in California and moved up here and bought one median priced home where we're very pleased to live. And one of the things that made Bellingham look attractive to us, because we could have settled anywhere from Portland north, is your vote already to put the temporary moratorium in place, and I'm here to urge you to make it permanent. We want to keep the natural beauty that we enjoy and the view that we have from our house on the reservation. I've served in California on long-term relief committees after Calaveras County burned and have seen other fires, and one of the risks is depopulation. If the natural beauty goes away, people say, I moved here for the natural beauty. Now that that's gone, I feel free to leave. So thank you for hearing this. Thank you for the work you've done on the moratorium. I urge you to make it permanent. And I have learned from the rest of the population that's spoken here that we find one positive, unified way forward that balances the jobs and the environment. And I pray that we do that.
Good evening, Mike Kaufman, Whatcom County. The first person that spoke tonight questioned your right on land use issues. And I believe land use issues is a very major part of what the county council is about. And one of the most major land use issues out there is eminent domain. You, the county council, have that right of eminent domain. What I hear a lot tonight out of different people is one of the things that I've been speaking to is that we have 2 refineries in Whatcom County. We have the Intelco works. We want more. We want more privilege for the white folk. We want more money for the white folks. I don't hear one person really speaking on behalf of the Lummi Nation and what that land means to the Lummi Nation. Someone asked earlier, Tony, wants to hear more of what I want. And what I would propose for the Cherry Point area is that we go down, there's the owner. The owner, as I understand it, of the major land there in Cherry Point is from Whatcom County, is go down and cut a deal and get that land. And if he won't cut a deal with you, you have the right of eminent domain to take that land. Take that land and give it to the county or give it to the Lummi Nation and end this process. Good jobs now. There is nothing now about dealing with the Lummi Nation. They claim right to that going all the way back to Ulysses S. Grant. They can tie that up forever. Remember when we dealt with the coal issue and the living democracy issue, and I went and talked to Gene Melios, one of the respected environmental lawyers at Western Washington, and I asked her, do we have the right of eminent domain? If I get up and speak about that in the council, am I just blowing smoke? And she was burp, 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 and all kinds of different things, and they're not going to do that. And I said, I'm just asking, do we have the right? Well, you have to have a reason. There's a good reason to own that land out there for the Puget Sound. Well, yes, you do have the right. And the county council owns the right of eminent domain. Back in 1990, we passed Initiative 490. That was a land use issue. That issue passed with a 64% vote. I strengthened that vote in the early 2000s. I got a unanimous vote out of the Planning Commission, and I got a unanimous vote to strengthen 490, a land use issue through the county council. That's rare company. Land use. You want to light this county council up? Talk about land use. GSX gas pipeline is basically permitted through FERC. It's sitting on the shelf. And the moment, in my opinion, because they talked about it last year, it was brought up. The moment you drop the moratorium, GSX comes off the shelf and it's ready to go. And then you're going to deal with land use. And when you're dealing with land use, you're going to deal with eminent domain. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for permitting us all to speak to you today. My name is Rick Egerth. I'm a resident of Bellingham. Been here about 2 years now. I'd like to speak in favor of extending the moratorium. I believe I have a perspective that's a little different than anyone else in the room. I retired up here from California. Yeah, I'm one of those. Having practiced for 30 years in business litigation. During most of the decade of the 90s, I represented members of the insurance industry in lawsuits brought by the oil industry, seeking to compel the insurance industry to pay for the cleanup of thousands of sites across North America. These were suits brought by the likes of Conoco, Exxon, Texaco, Phillips 66. Some of these funds, or some of these sites were Superfund sites. All of them were polluted. All of them were built in compliance with what were then the regulatory requirements for the locations they were in. I sat through well over 100 depositions. I read hundreds of declarations by employees and staff of these oil company locations in support of motions. Never once did I find one individual who didn't think that they had the best operation going, just like we've heard tonight. Never once did I hear anyone say that they intentionally tried to pollute. They were all good people. They were trying to do their job. But the fact of the matter is, the oil industry pollutes. It's the nature of oil. It's the nature of the business. Valves break, tanks rupture, collisions happen, explosions happen, oil gets out. The sad thing was that in every single one of the cases, every single one of the thousands of sites that were involved in these pieces of litigation, which involved tens of billions of dollars of potential liability, all of them could have been prevented by the simple expedient of stopping before the construction was made, before the dollar was made, to figure out how best do we protect the environment from pollution. What do we do to absolutely assure protection of the environment? That step was never made because it wasn't required.
30 seconds, please.
You have a chance now to do something that hasn't been done before, which is to tell the oil industry, tell us, or let us tell you, how you're going to make sure the environment is protected. If you can't do it, don't go ahead. If you can do it, prove it to us, show us it's 100% effective, and then you can build what you want to build. But you shouldn't let the potential for job loss, whatever that potential is,
Time.
ruin the environment that we all live in. We are the environment. Thank you.
Well, I'll just say right off the bat, I am against the moratorium. My name is Robert Kinney. I'm 40 years old. I grew up in Birch Bay. Started in Cherry Point in 1999. I'm with the Labor's 292. And I have to say, I can guarantee you without that refinery, I would not make it in Whatcom County. As you've all heard, that the cost of living is ridiculous. The prices you've heard that you need to make in a wage just to own a home, you need to make double that to be able to rent. So I'm a father of two, my wife, I support all three, which is a challenge. I don't support all three of them plus myself because I choose to, because I make that great of money in Whatcom County. My wife has lupus, which makes more miserable things. Anyways, I think we need Cherry Point. I don't think we need regulations. I think if you were to take all the regulations away from Cherry Point and not tell them what to do or even guide them, they would do just fine. That is the safest, cleanest refinery I've ever been in. Of all the jobs I've worked, they're still the most caring, safest. They think about everything far ahead of, of time. Everything's planned out. Nothing is taken for granted. There are some people may not know that when we do shutdowns, turnarounds, I mean, that refinery is not just guiding our safety in that refinery. They guide it all the way from that refinery to the freeway. They pay State Patrol to look after the families, the workers, everybody in that area. You got traffic coming to that refinery during those times that, I mean, it's a small city in there. I mean, the traffic is horrendous that drives down that road. And for a company to pay out of their own pocket to maintain the safety of the people around them shows a lot of integrity, I believe. And I wasn't prepared to speak at all, so I'm just going to end it there. Appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Pam Brady on behalf of my employer, BP Cherry Point Refinery. Cherry Point Refinery is one of the largest private employers in Whatcom County with more than 800 direct employees reporting there every day, and more than 500 contractors do so as well. On an average day, we process 236,000 barrels of crude oil. About 90% of those barrels emerge as transportation fuels, and about 10% of it comes out as calcined coke, which we sell to the world's aluminum manufacturers. We compete on a global scale, but this moratorium harms our ability to compete on a level playing field. As Josh Summers stated earlier, on behalf of his employer, BP similarly competes for capital on a global scale. Investment in our facilities, including investments that support an energy transition already underway, is more challenging where there is regulatory uncertainty. Over the past decade, we've invested $1.5 billion worth of capital improvements at the refinery, including new technologies and process units that produce cleaner burning fuels. This moratorium, I believe, is a breach of compact between Whatcom County and Cherry Point Industries, who came to Whatcom County because they were welcomed here. Nearly 50 years ago, my company came here because it was welcomed. It was attracted to Whatcom County, and Whatcom County attracted it. Over the years, we've invested billions of dollars, and we've provided thousands of jobs, and we've been harmed by this moratorium. Our rights have been infringed upon. This is 5 renewals of the moratorium, and not only are our rights infringed upon, but we'll never know what businesses couldn't come to Whatcom County because they couldn't count on regulatory certainty from this body. So we ask that I ask you to reject the moratorium and not continue this practice. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Althea Wilson. I'm a Lummi tribal member, and I'm also a Whatcom County citizen. I would like to tell you a little bit about the history of what was going to be an ore plant in Lummi. So back in the early 60s, they were going to bring an ore plant into Lummi, and a man by the name of Dr. Wally Heath, met with some Lummies and decided that at the time he was a marine biologist, and he suggested that they consider what is now the agriculture out there. I could only imagine what it would be like if they decided on an ore plant rather than an agriculture site on Haxton Way. Today, there's numerous shellfish, numerous species of salmon, crab, prawn, all the UNA, all the usual and accustomed fishing areas that the Lummi people fish today are direct results of decisions that are made by people like you. We have to really consider what is important here. I understand that there are a lot of jobs that need to be secured. Those jobs are secured. They're not going anywhere. It sounds like they make lucrative money. Right now, we are considering the idea that the salmon is being salted on every level, not just in the Salish Sea, but everywhere, global warming. I have to say that I have a bachelor's degree in environmental science, and in looking at the history of what the Salish Sea has gone through, there is still mercury in the Bellingham Bay. It's not cleaned up. It's still there. And so when we talk about these issues, we have to talk about them realistically. We can't just placate some ideas that these things are going to go away just if we wish them away. I just want to say that I appreciate you all. Having the opportunity to stand here is a real honor for me, and being able to share my thoughts and my considerations of wanting to keep the moratorium in place and even considering it for long term is a very honor for me to be able to do that. I'm one member.
30 seconds, please.
Thank you very much. I'm just one member of a community that really cares about the environment. Thank you for your time.
After this, if there's no one else after this person, we're closing the public hearing.
My name is Natalie Chavez. I am here in support of you extending this moratorium. It will give the Planning and Development Services staff more time to draft legislation pertaining to the processing and approving of major project permits in the Cherry Point urban growth area. Thank you for creating this moratorium and extending it multiple times already. Thank you for caring enough about our community, the natives in our community, our environment, and our future enough to do this. I believe that the majority of us in this room and in our community are not fully comprehending what it is that you are doing or why you are doing it. It is beyond our comprehension at some level, and it matters. It matters not only to our county, Whatcom County, but to all counties in the United States. This moratorium is not about the refineries not being good neighbors, and it's not about the refineries not having high safety standards or not being clean. And it's not about Whatcom County not supporting high-wage jobs or family wage jobs. And it's not about Whatcom County not being a competitive community. And it's not about the refineries not doing it right. This moratorium is about much more than all of that. And my heart is heavy that this issue is so controversial and polarized, and that some of us are uncomfortable and suffering. Please extend this moratorium. Extending this moratorium is a socially responsible thing to do, the environmentally responsible thing to do, the culturally responsible thing to do for the natives, and is in the best interests of our community at large. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Wiley Warner. I'm part of IBW 191, and I'm also a former graduate at BTC, the electrician program. I've lived here all my life, and sorry, not really a speaker, but I just had to come out and say this because a few things I highly disagree with some of the people. Everyone has their own opinion on things, but what people don't understand is if you want to take away the potential growth for refineries, it's going to be just like the SGL plants that which that's the carbon fiber plants that BMW has moved over to the Wenatchee area. There's the Microsoft data plants that they moved over to the Wenatchee area. Why? A whole lot cheaper living, less regulations, and they can prosper. Why would anyone want to be in a city, county, state, or country if they're being so heavily regulated? Yes, there needs to be regulations. Yes, there needs to be safe. And yes, refineries are the #1 safety place, I think, in Whatcom County. You get one little slice on your finger, you have to report it. I mean, what other place is that? Like, if you get a paper cut, do you have to report it? No. But they do. And it's just, and another thing that sort of really got me as a gentleman earlier, said that that's white man work. I'm sorry, but I'm Native American. That ticks me off. Don't you dare say that. And also to add to that is we actually have quite a few Lummi tribal residents in our union. They work at the refineries. They work at Shell. They work at Tesoro. They work at BP. They work at Phillips 66. So that's just the electricians. That's not the carpenters. That's not the laborers. We want to have a good, sustaining Bellingham so it doesn't turn into like GP, where that closed down. How many jobs did that affect? Oh, it affected maybe 1,000. No. You got truckers. You got tankers. You got all the money that they spend. That contributes to everything. If you guys like a good paying job, that all contributes. I don't see people moving here putting that much money if they see all their potential growth for their other competitors. They got their business taken away. Why? Oh, you can't work here. You got to do this. Why do you want to stay in place when you're so limited? Yes, you need to have some regulations, but not so much that you can't prosper and you can't live. Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, we'll close the public session. What's the wish of the council?
Move to approve.
Mr. Donovan moves to approve. Mr. Buchanan moves to second. Any discussion?
Move to amend, removing propane, butane, and natural gas.
We have a motion to amend. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion to amend?
They're not unrefined. We keep saying this is about unrefined. Those are not unrefined. Very simple.
Any further discussion on the motion to amend? Seeing none, all in favour for the motion to amend, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
No.
That fails 2-4 with Mr. Bird and Ms. Brenner in favour. Well, now we're back to the original motion. Any further discussion on the original motion? Mr. Donovan and then Mr. Buchanan.
No, I was pointing at her.
Pointing to me because my hand's been up the whole
Were
time.
you pointing to her?
I was pointing to Ms.
Okay,
Brenner.
right.
She had her
You
hand
had two
up
people
before me.
pointing to you. Okay, Ms.
Well,
Brenner.
yeah, but not you, because you weren't even looking. Anyway, I am opposed to this, and I don't doubt for one second almost everybody who spoke was very sincere. But one of the things that wasn't even brought up, and I have talked about it over and over, I even did some, little blips about it in the Whatcom Watch, is I did do my research, especially about wild salmon, because I'm obsessive about wild salmon. And the major issue with wild salmon is our prevailing acidic rain, our prevailing acidic winds, and our prevailing acidic currents that are all coming from Asia. I would like to see more refining done in Whatcom County and in this country, because our regulations, we have them and they are stringent. They aren't over there. But nobody sees acidic rain. They don't see acidic currents. So it's kind of like, oh, well, everything's fine because we don't see it. We can see stuff, the steam and stuff coming out of the stacks at the refineries. It shouldn't have to do with what we see. It shouldn't have to do with what we feel. It should have to do with that there are facts about it. And I worry very much about losing our salmon populations especially, but there's no seafood I don't like, let's put it that way. But it really is bothering me because the more we do to stop refining in the United States, most of that I would think, and from what I read, a lot of it is going to Asia. And we're just going to be the recipients of all the pollution that they make because they don't have regulations. I've been out to the refineries many times over the years. I'm impressed, and I can only go with what my own, not just gut feeling, but my own research tells me. And sometimes things aren't as clear because you don't see it. And I really didn't even expect to find what I found when I did the research. But I also don't think people should ever have to apologize for wanting good-paying jobs, or other people should have to say they care more about the environment than someone else. I invite anybody to come out to my place anytime. I was on Sustainable Connections Tour of Low Impact Development, and I did all the work myself, and I was on Resources Tour of, let's see, one of them was Low Impact Development, one was Recycled Homes. That must have been Resources, or the Restore, I should say. I think we all contribute in our own ways to making things better. Most of us do. But this issue has bothered me so much because it's either you're for it or you're against it. And I don't think it should be about that at all. I think it should be about who does the best job. It's not going to go away, so who's going to do it better, us or mostly Asia? And I am terrified of the thought of creating more pollution over there, that we're just going to sit back and say, well, we did our thing in Whatcom County, pat ourselves on the back, and we really have caused more harm to the environment by not, I expect us to have the most stringent rules, and I didn't hear anybody for or against it say we shouldn't. But to even think about causing more restrictions that I do disagree with people who said those jobs aren't going to go away. Those jobs, they do go away. Like everybody understands, these are international global companies, and if they get too much hassle in one place, they'll do stuff in another place. And I'd like it to be here because we do have great rules. We've got strong enforcement. And somebody said, if you can't be 100%, then you shouldn't be allowed to do it. Nothing in this world is 100%. I mean, I could drop dead tomorrow or tonight, who knows? This whole attitude of everything's got to be 100%. Well, nothing is, but I do trust the refineries that I know here in Whatcom County to be among, if not the best in the world. And I don't trust where that stuff is going to go if it doesn't get done here. So I really feel like there should be a way to bring people more together on this, and I don't see it happening, and I'm disappointed. But I just, nothing is, and also this ordinance, it pretends it's about unrefined. Well, I don't support, shipping out unrefined. I don't want to do that. But first of all, it contains stuff about refined, or that we wouldn't be able to do refined stuff either, shipping it. And second, I want more refining done here, and we don't even talk about that. So I've talked enough.
Mr. Dolan.
I'm going to speak in favor of the motion. It would be out of order to say I could actually discover if Ms. Brunner likes every form of seafood. I could probably think of a couple that you might.
I like what?
You said you like every kind of seafood. I could maybe think of some you don't like.
I don't
That's
think
another
so.
comment.
You don't know me.
Urchin gonads, sea cucumbers?
Anything that I can cook and eat,
Okay,
or even eat
all
raw.
right. That's sorry. I want to thank everybody for the informed, passionate discussion, and a lot of people came a long way and spent their nights letting us know what you think, and that's really important. I don't want to keep having these interim moratoriums. I don't think any of us want to. We're trying to, I would say, get more responsible code. And I actually, before I speak in some specific points to the resolution or the ordinance, I think we have both sides, and I think there's actually a lot more agreement among us than disagreement, but are expecting more than this ordinance can do, or that we will be able to do more than we're not going to do eminent domain. We're probably not going to solve forest fires in California, or make traffic better. Likewise, we're said that we're eliminating the middle class, or that we're cutting off fossil fuels. That's not happening. And even I think if we look at the situation right now, there is investment going on under the moratorium. There's maintenance and upgrades going on. There was just, I think this week, a DNS on a proposal for 5 years of maintenance and update of the Petrogas pier. And that kind of gets to the heart of what I think we're trying to do, is that maybe those are small-scale projects we're not so worried about, but when it's like a new pipeline coming in, or when it's a coal terminal, or it's one of these things that we really just don't have the tools to know how to deal with that. How do we protect the public health and safety with these new major projects, while at the same time trying to let the refineries keep on doing what they're doing and then expand in terms of increasing refining here and not having to export it. So I think there were comments that we're not making progress. We are. We're having hearings in the last few weeks trying to come up with code to figure out how do industries mitigate catastrophic damages? How can they potentially insure against those? How can we get some provisions for infrastructure that might need to go in terms of public investment for these things? We also need to acknowledge the reality of state and federal and treaty rights when we're talking about what can happen there in the future, and how do we get our code consistent with that stuff. A lot of it's kind of boring. It's not going to end fossil fuels. It's not going to kill the industry. I hate to say it's not going to save the planet, but I think it's going to make a much safer community, and at least give us the tools to deal with these big projects that are kind of staring down at us that we really aren't prepared to deal with. So that's why I'm in favor of it.
Mr. Sadhu.
I think there are a few underlying questions, very basic questions, and that's where this discussion started. The first question was, and that's back in 2016, I believe, that if the industry, local industry, do not intend to export crude oil, they should say so. And that was the question, that can the statement be made that for next 25 years, we will not export crude oil from this facility? That solves a lot of issues. The other question was that there are three players in the crude oil. There's a producer in North Dakota and other places, or tar sands. Then there is a transporter, it's a railroad. Then there is a receiver, the processor. The producer, once puts the oil in the tanker, rail car, washes their hands. They are done. Then there is a transporter and the receiver. The receiver says, until this oil hits my facility, I'm not responsible, because they don't own it. Now, maybe a lot of people don't know, the railroad, and this is like 150-year-old law, when railroad was the only thing in the world in United States. The law says railroads do not have to have any insurance. No insurance. They may carry some insurance for the damage to their rail car, for the damage to their tracks, for stoppage of business. If there's a derailment, they may be not able to bring the rail cars for 2 months, 3 weeks. They cover that insurance. But the consequence of that spill, they're not responsible. This is not something I'm making it up. I was surprised when 2 years ago I started doing research, and there is a Rail Insurance Institute, or Insurance Institute for Railway, or something like that. And that's a federal, this is not a secret. And probably 150 years ago, it made a lot of sense, because they were transporting coal or wood. So, isn't it possible that all these three entities get together and create a fund? May not be only for Whatcom County, maybe for the whole nation. They say, if there is a catastrophic spill or thing, we'll take care of it. But instead, putting the burden on either local county or city or state or federal government, when all these things run out, then they will do that. I mean, these are very fundamental questions we are asking. I think there's a lot of noise around this issue. This is not about the refineries are not safe. By the way, you know, I'm a professional engineer. I spent 20 plus years in petroleum industry. I was dean at Bellingham Tech. I started the PTech program to train workers to get jobs at refineries. So I'm not totally unfamiliar. I spent 10 years with Northwest Clean Air Agency Advisory Board. Like nobody is really looking at, we should work together. This is not too much to ask. This is not like we hate refineries or we don't want these jobs. All this issue is actually, hijacked into totally different direction. Unless we address the very fundamental things. Another thing, BP refines 236,000 barrels a day. If you put 1 penny, that's about $40 million a day, rough number. $40 million a day. And now, 10 cents on the gas price we all pay for it changes like nobody's business. We just go to the gas station, oh, today is $3.25. Tomorrow, it's $2.93. We see that. Of course, there are a lot of middle people. All the money is not made by the refineries. But I'm just talking in general. What about the economics? And covering the insurance is a big issue. I mean, I think the other thing is that people did talk, and they're very passionate about their industry, about their personal job and their family, their kids. And I think a fisherman is no less to care about their family or their job than a person working at a refinery. If there are 12% jobs directly dependent on the refinery, there are another 88% jobs also. And those people deserve a similar treatment, a similar consideration. So I think that when somebody said, let's work together, that's what means let's work together. Hear the real issues and see how we can do for the whole community, not one industry. That's, I think, a common ground we can work on. Thank you.
So I want to bring up to a couple of things. People have talked about the impact on Cherry Point jobs. And when I listen to the testimony, I get the feeling that several people have actually not read the ordinance. So I want to read 2 sections of it. And the Whatcom County Council proposes, be it further ordained by the Whatcom County Council that an interim moratorium is hereby imposed prohibiting the filing, acceptance and processing of new applications for the conversion of land or water, new building or structure permits or other county permits or authorizations in the Cherry Point urban growth area, and this is the key part, for new or expanded facilities whose purpose is to facilitate the increased shipment of unrefined fossil fuels, not to be processed or consumed at Cherry Point. Unless, there's 3 exceptions, but I'll read 2. I'll read all 3. Were filed or complete prior to the effective date of this ordinance. Number 2 is are for building permits or remodels, maintenance or repairs of existing structures where there is no increased capacity for shipping unrefined fossil fuels, not to be processed or consumed at Cherry Point, or are necessary to protect the health and safety of the community. Now, the second paragraph that's relevant is that for the purpose of this ordinance, the definition of unrefined fossil fuel includes, but is not limited to, all forms of crude oil, whether stabilized or not, raw bitumen, diluted bitumen, syncrude, coal, methane, propane, butane, and other natural gas in liquid or gaseous formats, excluding those that are a byproduct of the refinery process in Cherry Point, UGA, and condensate. This moratorium has no impact on the current or future refining operations at Cherry Point. And if people here are concerned about that and don't believe that, then please read the ordinance, point out the section that is concerning you, and send me an email with an explanation. Because my frustration with a lot of the testimony here is I feel a lot of people haven't actually read the ordinance and understood what the impact is. Now, why are we so concerned about the export of crude? Or why should those of you who have eloquently talked about the need to preserve family wage jobs at Cherry Point, allowing Cherry Point refineries to convert to crude oil export terminals will result in not only the export of crude oil, but also the export of the jobs with them. And the earlier comment was the fact that there has been a reduction in the investment in Cherry Point. Well, let me explain. Up at the BP refinery, for example, they did a major re-engineering of the facility there, and my understanding is the majority of that work is finished. It has nothing to do with the moratorium. But let me tell you that if you tell any refinery that they have the choice of refining the product in the US at US labor rates to US environmental standards versus being able to export crude to a jurisdiction that doesn't have the same environmental standards or the same labor rates and then be allowed to re-import the refined product, I guarantee you that will stop investment in creating new refinery capacity in the US. This does not affect the growth of the refineries as refineries. It does impact the ability of the refineries being converted into crude oil terminals, and that's why I will continue to support this moratorium. Ms. Brenner and then Mr. Sir.
I'm first going to start with what Councilmember Sadhu said. You talk on one hand about wanting people to come together, but then you bring up, well, what about fishermen? I didn't hear anybody who spoke tonight say they didn't care about the fishermen. I heard there's no moratorium on fishermen. They're here to speak to what the moratorium is about. And if I didn't make it really clear, I not only support fishermen, I support all their products too. And I thought I sort of made that clear, but maybe not clear enough. The other one is, I did read the ordinance, and I read it completely different than you do. It's still gonna prevent expansion. And to keep it just the way it is isn't gonna work. And you can talk about unrefined all you want, and it does include refined stuff in here, and it says, except what's being done at Cherry Point right now. It's not clear at all about if Cherry Point refineries and Petrogas and the, PSE and all these companies wanted to expand, if they could do that, if they're gonna do the refining here. And you wanna put that in there, I think I'd support it. But the other thing is, and I guess Councilmember Sadhu said that, I don't know why you're talking about railroads. Yeah, I think it's terrible how railroads get away with everything. I'm not a big supporter of what they get away with. But we're talking about the refineries at Cherry Point now. We're not talking about the railroads. And to kind of blur one with the other, I think causes a lot of problems. I do believe that it's really important that we focus on what's happening at Cherry Point and not some of these other issues. I think we should take on some of these other issues. I also believe that any company that could cause massive problems should have a bond or some kind of insurance or something for what they do, including the railroads. But I just feel like it's so much easier to just kind of make everything black and white, and it's not, including this ordinance. It's not black and white. It's not, it can be interpreted a lot of different ways, including that it will stifle refining at Cherry Point.
Mr. Sadhu.
First of all, I want to correct a mistake I made. It's $40 million a year, 1 penny. That's not a day. That was totally wrong number. I just realized, I looked at my calculator. I think the reference to fishermen is that we as a society or America, we have gone through the decline in fish stock and how if you look back 25, 30 years on the West Coast, the decimation of fishing industry, that's what I'm referring. So when they come in and if they say that shut down refineries because fish is dying, I don't think people would like that either. But all I'm saying is there is a competing interest. There's a gentleman sitting right here, and he is gone through that. And there was a lady, Lynn Billington, she talked about Exxon Valdez and their impact on it. All I'm trying to do is not saying black and white, or this is it, I'm just saying that these are the examples from past 25, 30, 40 years. And so if these jobs are very near and dear to people who work in that industry today, yes, I'm not denying that. But how could you deny that the same right or same love for their jobs and profession for another people, which is competing? That's what my point was. I mean, I'm not saying, one or the other. Anyways, I'll just stop here.
Mr. Bird.
I'm going to start off topic, actually, for a second. These conversations are hard. They're really hard to have because there's a lot of opinions, and we all come from it based on our own background, our own experience, and our own knowledge, and the groups that we hang out with and what their opinions are, and those conversations that we have. To come up here and speak and share those feelings is difficult. It is very hard for a lot of people. I think you could see that tonight with some of the people that got a little emotional and choked up as they gave their testimony. And if we're going to make progress on these issues, we have to be open to listening to each other even when we disagree. We have to be intentional about giving people a chance to speak, and we have to be respectful about that. Regardless of what side you're on, because I've seen both sides do it. when we're here in this room and we snicker and we give a hard time or we cut in on people or we try to use rules against people, that's not the way that we come to an end of a discussion in a way that's beneficial to the community. I think my 10-year-old son would tell me that that's bullying and that's what they would describe it as, because that's what they're being taught. What we should be doing is we should be listening to people and understanding that while they may disagree with us, their opinion is still very valid. And I know that this won't be the last time we see this issue, nor the last time that we see a very controversial issue. And so I'd ask that anyone that comes again and participates, that you try to be intentional about how you do it in a respectful way, because we have a lot of passion, but I think we'll find a lot more benefit from it in the long run if we do. Moving on to the topic at hand, I want to be careful because I did hear two members of the council refer to this in context to export. And I know that in itself is illegal, that we cannot legally prevent export itself. I mean, that was very clear when we had the outside counsel came and give their presentation. So I think it's important that we steer clear of that topic in general. I'd also like to kind of address some of the things that I've heard tonight. There's a number of people that came up and they spoke, and a lot of them were in favor of this. I mean, it was pretty even divided as I kind of tracked the sides. And what I'll tell you is that I didn't hear a single multi-millionaire owner of BP step up here and say, hey, I have to keep this. I didn't hear no one from Phipps 66, none of their ownership showed up and said, hey, this plant's important to us. There's not anyone there that out of the billions that those companies make that came here because they're shareholders and they're reaping the rewards of those profits for those facilities. Actually, I heard very few members of BP and Cherry Point and Phipps 66 active employees out of the entire percentage of people step up to these podiums and testify tonight. The people I heard from tonight, in vast majority on that side of the issue, were people that are working for other providers, whether it was Peterson Brothers and the steel company, or VECA and the electrical, or the plumbing unions, or the carpenters. They're the people that benefit when Cherry Point and the industries out there expand, and when they go in and they rehab facilities to improve them, to make them better in the long run. They're the people that are worried that if those jobs don't continue to come forward because these properties don't get built out, that their jobs, because their employers, will cease to exist. It's not necessarily about BP, but if BP's not creating the projects there where they need these third-party companies, then those third-party companies won't have the work to supply to those employers or those employees. And so I think that that's important, that we understand that this is an issue that they're struggling with, and it's an issue that they are truly 100% concerned about. This is something that they believe. And if we came to any one of us in this room and said, hey, we're going to take your house away, or we're going to take your job away, you would come up here and you would testify and you would try to save it as well. And so that itself, I think, needs to be considered. I also think that there's not any of us that disagree that we want cleaner technology at the end of the day. I mean, I would love 100% renewable energy. Matter of fact, last time this moratorium came up, I think I convinced, well, I didn't convince, I'll take that back. I tried to convince Councilmember Brown to buy me a Tesla. And you'll remember that too. I mean, I would love to drive an electric car, right? I mean, that would be fantastic. The fact is, at the end of the day, the majority of us came here in cars that are powered by oil. And the fact is that at the end of the day, that us combined as individual humans have a far greater impact on pollution than these oil companies ever will. And they can only survive if we're buying their product. And so if we really want to make change over time, then it's up to us to stop using those products and find alternatives as individuals. And that will be a long-term benefit if that's the direction that we want to take. If it's something where we're really looking at how we can be safe, if it's something where we're looking at the jobs themselves, then I think that we have to start addressing it in very specific terms. And it can't be a moratorium that goes on for 2.5 years or more. It can't be a moratorium that includes, it's called unrefined, includes refined, and now with future changes to our ordinances, the more permanent ordinances will include any kind of hazardous material that could be hazard or deemed hazardous. We have to be intentional about that. I mean, we can't sit here and say, hey, you can't do pipelines, you can't do rail, you can't do truck, you can't do shipping via sea. At the end of the day, we have to understand that these are products we're going to use for a very long time. And so we have to give some options to be able to move these things. And we need to pick the better options for those. Whatcom County, as far as a place to refine these products, is the best option in the world to do this. If you're looking at pipelines, that is statistically the safest way to move oil or any kind of product. And so the question becomes, are we just against these products, or are we looking to actually do it in a more favorable manner? And if that's the case, then I think we need to start looking at a different approach.
Is a white Tesla okay? Because I can get one from Matchbox for $3.95.
Can I drive it?
If you lose a lot of weight.
I'm trying.
All right, Mr. Sadhu, and did you have your hand up?
Not yet.
Mr. Sadhu.
Since we are on this topic, I just want to say, and I have said this before, you know, we used to burn wood to cook. We used to burn wood in our boilers. We stopped that because that's not sustainable. I mean, the lowest end use of this very valuable product we call oil, this is the lowest end use. You take it out of the ground, shake it and clean it, and burn it. Then you take more out of the ground, shake it and burn it, shake it and clean it, and burn it. Like people talk about plastics and all this. I think that's the higher end value use. Oil itself can be $200 a barrel and still be a viable product, but not for burning it. Why don't we burn? We knew that we will get rid of all our trees and forest, which has an important thing for our clean air and other things. We don't do that. Why the railroad stopped burning coal? Because this is a progressive thing over years when we come up with better things and we adopt those. So oil can be a $500 a barrel, and we can make much better products and extend the life by another 500 years. It's not saying that oil is bad. How we are using, and we did not know better. Today's technology, we can use it more wisely and extend its life and still be part of our life, our benefit to the society. The point is that this transition, oil will be with us for several decades. It's not disappearing, it's not going away. But just making that argument, since we are using it, so we should not do any regulation, or we should not worry about what it is going since we are using it, so we should totally exempt it. That's the argument being given, that don't say anything. I think that's where, when we talk about that we can come together and find the solutions. I don't believe that oil is going to go away tomorrow. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Ms. Brenner.
A couple of things. I never heard anybody say it doesn't need to be regulated, it should be exempt from everything. I didn't hear anybody tonight say that. I heard them say, you know, the SEPA process works really well. We've got these regulations that work really well. I didn't hear anybody say, don't regulate them. So, and maybe I didn't understand you correctly, but that's how I heard what you said. The other one was something you said too about stopping all the export of all unrefined or crude. Now, one of the things I do know that a lot of the good refineries do it. Probably they don't do it in other places, but in this country they do it. They close down to do upgrades. They close down to do all kinds of things. And when they do that, they ship what they've got, the unrefined that they've got sitting there, they ship it to another facility so that it can be refined, so they can do their whatever kind of cleanup or upgrade or whatever it is they're doing. So if you meant no export, you say no export off the United States, I could support that too. But to not allow refineries when they're closing down for legitimate purposes to make sure things are clean and upgraded and all that, I think that's a whole different issue. So,
Mr. Sadhu.
Just to clarify what I meant by not regulate or don't do anything. I remember I was a very young engineer, and OSHA came in. And there was a similar resistance to OSHA. We've been doing it, and so what if your finger is cut? You were not careful. Be careful next time. But there was a huge rallies and opposition to OSHA and safety. Why we have to spend this money? It's going to make us go out of business. This was the argument. The extra cost you are putting on us is going to make us uncompetitive in the world. Our industries will fail. This is baloney. Why we need this? We just tell people, be careful. If your one finger is cut, you will be very careful next time. You won't have the second one cut off. Like, these arguments have gone over many years on different things. Why refineries are very safe and very clean, there is some reason behind it. It's not totally voluntary. I'm not saying that they not voluntarily care about it, but when you have to spend money, you have to have some kind of carrot and stick to see that we should have safe operations. We should have clean operations. We should not have air pollution. We should watch our chimney because somebody is watching the opaqueness, PM10, PM2. All those things come and play a factor. So just saying that, that this has no impact, it has, and it may have bad impact, but we have learned to live with that. Like I said, 1 penny is $40 million a year. Then you make your decision. I'd rather spend $20 million and have my regulations come, and I will save another 20. So, okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favour of the... Oh, sorry, it's an ordinance vote. So would the clerk please call the roll?
Barbara Brenner?
no.
Rudd Brown?
Yes.
Barry Buchanan?
Yes.
Tyler Bird?
No.
Todd Donovan?
Yes.
Satpal Sidhu?
Yes.
That passes 4-2 with Brenner and Bird opposed and Ballou absent. Next item up is...
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, we can take a 5-minute break. Let's take a 5-minute break.
What?
Let's take a 5-minute break.
Sounds good. Oh, you look worse than me.
I have a solution for you.
Wonderful.
I have a wonderful solution in regards, and I know I planned this earlier that I would come to you about your listening tour and about the jail. I can't claim that I went all the way back to when all this started about the jail, because I guess it was 20 years when I started. Oh, but I know there was 3 committees, 3 advisory committees. I watched the council buy the property, millions of dollars. I watched the hundreds and thousands of dollars that were studied. This jail has been studied to death. I went to lots of meetings where the executive said, I don't only want to build a jail. I want to have the money to operate it. I've heard that argument. I mean, it's been studied up and down and every way. And I want to tell you, there's one key thing that didn't happen during all that. At the point, even some of the council, and I know all of you weren't here through that whole process. I think it was 100% when you bought the property and anyway, how can I say this? At the key points, the council wasn't behind the jail. If you would, this is the segue from what we just went through. You said, let's get together, let's cooperate on this. And the executive talked about that today in the executive report. It's not only the judicial and the legislative body and the executive. You're the key. The council is the key to the jail. You all know it's a bottomless pit. And there's liability, and you've heard it all. You're the key. If you get behind it, if you stand up and say, I know we need a jail, there is no way out of it, it'll go. That EMS levy came in there at just the wrong time. You didn't have the support.
30 seconds, please.
Of the fire people and so forth. It was slim the first time. You're the key. Do it.
Anybody else for the open public session? Seeing none, we are closing the open public session. Next item up is...
Next item is the consent agenda. And there are items 1 through 6, and they all received a vote 3-0. And I so move for approval.
So there's been voted...
Keep it simple.
Yep. Any discussion on these items? Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0 with Mr. Ballou absent.
I said aye, just.
I will poke you.
Trying to confuse me again, Mr. Bird.
Natural resources.
Next up is natural resources.
We had 2 items in natural resources. Committee considered a resolution declaring, approved, recommended to council 2-0 resolution declaring county council support the 2018 Whatcom County Agricultural Strategic Plan, AB 2018-217. And it's a resolution.
So it doesn't need a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0 with Mr. Ballou absent.
And we had a second resolution affirming the Purchase of Development Right Oversight Committee ranking and authorizing Whatcom County PDR Administrator and Whatcom County Executive to proceed with the acquisition of an agricultural conservation easement on the Sadu application, AB 2018-223. And I think we had a 2-0 vote on that. That was 12 hours ago.
It was a while back, yeah.
But I could,
And just for clarity of the record, I wasn't there. I assume the Sadu is not this.
Not
Yeah,
related.
we've already made those jokes.
No, that's fine. I just wanted for the.
Yeah, that's good to
I
get
think-
that out
I
there,
think
yeah.
for the benefit of the record, this is not Councilmember Sadu's property.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And that's also a resolution.
All right, so seeing any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0 with Mr. Baloo absent.
Okay, the next item is from the Finance Administrative Services Committee. The first one is the resolution updating the appendix of 2015 Comprehensive Economic Development Strategies, that is CDIS AB 2018-224, and there are 3 items added to that. The one is Whatcom Regional Resource Center Expansion Project, and the BB Warm Outfall Drainage Project, and the Rural County Broadband Feasibility Study. So these 3 items were added to the CDIS document. And it received a 3-0 vote, and I so move for approval.
So it's been moved for approval. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0 with Mr. Baloo absent. And then, Madam Clerk, is the next item a
So,
roll?
next item is request authorization for the county executive to enter into a contract between Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District and United States Geological Survey to fund the ongoing operation and maintenance of county's 6 stream gauges within the Nooksack River early flood warning system, plus stream gauges at the Nooksack River Everson overflow and Jones Creek in Acme for early flood warning and flood response in the amount of $116,937. Council is acting as Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District Board of Supervisors, AB 2018-225. This item also received a 3-0 vote, and I so move for approval.
It's been moved for approval. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say aye. And in this case, the council is acting as the Whatcom County Flood Controls and District Board of Supervisors. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0 with Mr. Baloo absent. Next item up is appointment to the Whatcom County Wildlife Advisory Committee, Technical Expertise in Wildlife and Habitat Management, representative, term ending December 31st, 2022. Applicant is Robert Waddell. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to appoint.
Mr. Sadu's moved to appoint. Mr. Donovan's seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Bird?
I know the city has one, but don't we have a rule about how long you should live in the community before being appointed to a committee?
Yeah.
In the city, it's 2 years.
Well, his address wasn't
No,
even in
I don't
Whatcom
think we
County.
No, he's got 2 addresses.
His mailing address.
There were 2 addresses, one's on that street.
Discretion.
On one of them, the mailing address was somewhere
Does
else.
have to be a
Burien
resident
or
of the
somewhere.
company, county.
I think it was.
Hey, I'm going to vote no because he's only been here for 3 months, and I'd prefer the position go to someone who's been here for a while.
Yeah, it says LaConner.
The main address says F Street in Bellingham, I believe.
Well,
I
it's
can't
kind
No,
of
his,
weird.
his mailing address is in Lacombe.
He has
Yeah.
to be a registered voter in Whatcom County.
And is he a registered voter?
Says he is.
Okay.
I know, it just
Yes.
struck me as weird that his address is LaConner.
Is it specific
It
to?
says which council district you live in, says district number 2.
Well, he could live there, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's registered to vote in Whatcom County, right? I mean, he could be registered
Yeah,
to
I
vote.
think it does. Registered to vote in Whatcom County, it says yes.
Oh, yeah, it says yes, number 5.
But you can register to vote anywhere.
We don't have a residency requirement on the application, but his mailing address does raise a question. I think I'd be more comfortable if we verified if he was actually registered to vote here.
I move to table and get that answer.
So do we have a motion to table? Is there a second for that?
Oh, second.
Yeah, so motion and a second. Any discussion?
No.
Seeing none, all in favour of tabling, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's.
I just thought it
how
was
did you vote?
weird.
I said no.
Aye. So That's 5-1 with Mr. Donovan opposed and Mr. Ballou absent. To
Who made
table
that?
until next.
Who made that motion?
Barbara.
Barbara.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, introduction items. Do we have a motion to introduce?
Move to introduce.
Second?
This is items 1 through 4. Motion and a second. So Mr. Buchanan moves to introduce. Mr. Donovan seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes 6-0 with Mr. Ballou excused. Next item up is committee reports, natural resources.
In addition to what we just voted on, we had a broader presentation about the Purchase of Development Rights Program and an introduction to what some of the new applications are that we might be seeing in the future, and a discussion about how we might be, or the committee might be changing the ranking process, and that's, I think, one of the items we just introduced that'll be coming back to us.
Okay. Finance and Administrative Services?
Yeah, we had a report from the county executive, and most of the discussion was about homes now, not later, and their application to use the northwest property next to the maintenance yard as a place for tiny homes. They actually had a meeting yesterday, and that was he was explaining that what are the difficulties being a rifle range nearby and no water, no sewer, no electricity, and the permitting process. So there were several hurdles, or the time it will take to get that approved, and the ordinance is only like 6 months to 6 months, 1 year. And if it takes a year to actually just get it approved, it's not, and the need for that is right now, like yesterday. So I think he expressed his perspective that he's not really ready for that site, and he's looking for, administration is looking for, not he personally, administration is looking for direction from the council. And I think council is also need to discuss this at length, maybe at our next meeting. What are the other things? And so that was the major part of the discussion from county executive's report. The second thing we had was a quarterly report from Whatcom County Finance Department. He gave us the total financials as well as the balances on various funds, and expecting that we are doing better on the revenue side than the expense side. And he expressed that there are probably $6 million worth of requests on his table, $3 million for the capital expenses and $3 million for the operations, whereas we may have $2 million extra coming in. So it's a competitive process, and as the administration goes through and brings their priorities to the council sometime end of September, October, then we will have the chance to look at it and review it. And that was it.
Okay. Public Works.
Public Works, we had a very interesting director's update, and I hope this gets online. It was great. It talked about how many miles have been asphalted, what cost, how much chip seal, what cost, striping, what cost, mowing, and major repairs, and then capital projects. And it was really pretty darn interesting because a lot of these I had no idea what was going on, and so just reading it. This is good for the average person who doesn't really get into the weeds to look at this. I think it would be very helpful. So can we get this online, or, oops, can we ask, oh, there's our deputy executive. Thank you, Tyler. He's shaking his head yes. I think it'd be great to have that online.
Anything further?
Nope, thank
Okay.
you.
Criminal Justice.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Today we had a report on the Whatcom County Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee's listening tour. We had a report given by the consultant that facilitated our sessions at Crossroads Consulting, And the report, is it online now or it's going to be soon? We believe it's on the website now, so it's available for the public to view. Take a look at, what we heard from citizens throughout Whatcom County.
Planning and Development Committee, we had a discussion about whether or not we should regulate vacation rentals and to what extent that would look like. We've postponed that conversation until we get more data back from staff. We also looked at proposed amendments to the comprehensive plan and have decided that since there's going to be an update next year that we'll begin working on, that we will postpone that so that it can be done with the same update.
And anything, sorry, there was planning and development.
That was
it.
That's it. So anything further? Council member updates? Else for the good of the order before we retire for recess, summer recess?
Everybody have a good 5 weeks.
Yeah.
I got a meeting next week, and then I got a meeting on the 4th.
Actually, sir, is there anything that you hung out through the end here, is there? All right, oh, cool.
Isn't that wonderful?
Are you a student? Are you? Oh, come on. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Wonderful. Cool, thank you.
I've had without going into detail, I've had the pleasure of meeting some very interested young people from Western, people interested in the political process. It's been wonderful, so very inspiring. Okay, with nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Have a good summer.
Yay.